the Chief Information Security Officer. She focuses on complex e-discovery and digital forensics, cybersecurity. She's also a former assistant district attorney and handles white-collar criminal matters and investigations. She's also an experienced litigator and the president of the National Asian Pacific American Bar Association, or NAPABA, which is the nation's largest Asian Pacific American membership organization representing over 100,000 attorneys, judges, law professors, and law students. I thought I was going to be judging and presiding as the presiding judge today, but we wanted to give the children a true life experience of what it means to be a judicial officer, and as close as we can. And even though the mock trial rules don't require any grounds for disqualification, I made a disclosure to the teams that which similar to what we would do in a normal courtroom, because of the relationship that I had to an attorney on one team and a coach on another team, both related within the third degree of consanguinity, i.e. they're my nieces and nephews, that I would not participate as the presiding justice unless both teams consented. And both teams did not consent. So it's going to go forward, and good luck to both teams. And I hope you do very well tonight and enjoy the match. Thank you.
Good evening. Before we begin the competition, we have a few more housekeeping matters. I would like to ask for the team rosters.
You.
Now I would like to ask the teams to introduce themselves, their name and the role they'll be playing tonight. And since you've given us the rosters, I'd like you to turn around and let the audience know who you are and what position you're going to aspire to. So we'll start with Academy of Our Lady of Guam.
Good evening, I'm Gabrielle Tesoro, and I will be doing the direct Kelly Adams in the class of Kingsley Ford, as well as the closing remarks. Good evening, my name is Ray Vegas. I'll be doing the direct examination for Adrian Montesanti and the cross examination for Tate Sullivan Magna.
Good evening, my name is Isabella Sosa, and I'll be conducting the opening statements, the direct examination of Ms. Rona Petito, and the cross examination of Dr. Alvin Vera.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Rome, and I'll be playing the role of the role.
Good evening, my name is Chelsea Cruz, and I will be playing the role of Adrian Montesanti.
Good evening, my name is Kyra Kanata, and I'll be playing the role of Kelly Adams. And our timekeeper tonight is Amber Pineda.
Good evening, my name is Matthew Camacho. My co-counsels and I are representing Kingsley Ford, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Tate Sullivan Magnum and the cross-examination of Adrian Montesanti.
Good evening, my name is Dennis Rodriguez, and I will be doing the opening statement, the direct examination of Kingsley Ford, and the cross-examination of Rowan Petito.
Good evening, my name is Jordan Guzman. I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Auden Vera and the cross-examination of Kelly Adams. I will also be doing the closing arguments.
Good evening, my name is Ian Goss, and I'll be playing Dr. Auden Vera.
Good evening, I'm Gabriel Coronado, and I will be Kingsley Ford.
Good evening, my name is Diego Camasuro, and I'll be playing as Tate Sullivan Magnum.
Thank you. Is the prosecution prepared for trial?
Maybe, Your Honor, maybe address several housekeeping matters before we begin the match.
You may.
Do you have permission to move freely about the well?
You have permission to do that while you're examining witnesses. When you give the statements, opening and closing, you must stand at the podium.
Thank you, Your Honor. And before we begin, maybe swear in all of the witnesses for the purpose of saving time.
We'll do that shortly.
And would you like the lawyers and witnesses to address you or the jury during this course of this trial?
Okay, we have a jury over here. So you can address us or the jury as you feel is appropriate.
And is our request to approach a witness satisfactory, or would you prefer that we obtain permission each time we are to approach a witness?
As long as you don't get in their space, so to speak, you may approach them without asking for permission.
And may we have a short recess after the prosecution rests and before closing statements?
I'll tell you the schedule in a moment, okay?
Yes, Your Honors. And Your Honor, would you like the lawyers to address you only as Your Honor, or would you like the lawyers to address all of the judges collectively as Your Honors?
You can just address me since we have so many judges tonight.
And then finally, as prosecution, may we reserve whatever remaining time we have for a rebuttal?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does anyone from Father D want to address any preliminary matters?
Yes, sir. Your Honor, we would also like to ask permission to approach opposing counsel and the witness when necessary.
You may do that for the presentation of exhibits.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we would also like the court to take judicial notice that magnifying glasses make small objects appear bigger or easier to see.
The court will take notice of that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we would like the court to also take judicial notice that each witness has submitted an affidavit before the trial and was given an opportunity to make changes before this trial.
That won't be necessary.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Your Honor, lastly, we would like to also stipulate that one computer has at least one computer processor.
I'll allow that. That will be a stipulation.
Thank you.
A judicial notice, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And with that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask the witnesses to please stand and face the bailiff. Court will take notice of all 6 witnesses standing, and the bailiff may proceed.
Do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
You may be seated. Thank you. The court takes notice that all witnesses were sworn. We will begin the trial with the opening statements, first the prosecution, then the defendant. Then after the opening and opening statements, the prosecution will go ahead with its opening and case in chief. Afterwards, the court will be in recess for 5 minutes. When we come back from the recess, the defendant may present his case in chief. We will take a 5-minute recess at the conclusion of the defendant's case in chief, and then conclude with the closing arguments of each side, reserving for rebuttal any time remaining prosecution may have. After we finish the closing arguments, the judges will leave the courtroom and complete their scoring. We will come back and make comments to individual participants or the teams while the committee scores and reaches a conclusion as to the winner and who the outstanding attorney and the outstanding witness are. And then we will announce the winner. I would like to acknowledge that this competition is a lot of hard work on the students' part, and we appreciate that. We also appreciate the work of the coaches and the family members who help their students prepare. This is a very important competition, and we're glad we're able to resume it. We had a short time without this competition due to the pandemic. So those of us on the panel are looking forward to seeing the competition, and we want to wish you much success as you engage in the competition tonight. So we're now prepared to start, and I would call on the prosecution to give their opening statement.
Good evening, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, may it please the court. My name is Isabella Villasoto, and along with my co-counsels, Gabriela Tesoro and Avera Regis, we will be representing the state of Idaho against Mr. Kingsley Ford. Tonight, we will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knowingly sold stolen property. Tonight, you will know the facts, and these facts will not set Mr. Kingsley Ford free. The facts are that Ms. Rowan Pentito is a first-generation college student and an ambitious computer science major. And during her freshman year at the University of Idaho, she met the defendant, and a friendship was formed. From studying together to hiking trips, Ms. Pentito believed that she had found a friend in the defendant. And naturally, this friendship continued to their sophomore year. And during her sophomore year, the defendant approached her with a business proposal. Sophisticated Systems, a business built on the defendant's dreams to sell refurbished computers from spare parts to college students. But Ms. Pentito was apprehensive to accept. You see, from ending her tutoring business to working at the campus cafeteria, it was a risk to start a business that had no guarantee of success. But, like most of us, she trusted her friends. So, she trusted the defendant. So Ms. Pentito quit her job at the campus cafeteria and agreed to assemble computers for Sophisticated Systems. It began with building 20 laptops and desktops for the business, and gradually, the demand for these refurbished computers increased. And with increasing sales, the defendant went as far as convincing Ms. Pentito to sign off on a $50,000 loan. A loan that is too big of a burden for any low-income college student to bear, but Ms. Pentito believed in the defendant's dreams for Sophisticated Systems. Yet this success soon came crashing down when the COVID-19 pandemic hit Sophisticated Systems hard. The business began experiencing supply chain issues which drastically cut its profits. So with no real source of income and the burden of paying back a $50,000 loan, Ms. Pentito took a job as a courier for Tater Chips in February 2021. And this is when the defendant's dreams became Ms. Pentito's nightmare. Because when the defendant became aware of Ms. Pentito's employment at Tater Chips, he offered to reimburse her for stealing processing chips to keep Sophisticated Systems afloat. And Ms. Pentito was against this, but using her financial situation to his advantage, he offered her payments under the guise of reimbursements for stealing the chips. So we, the prosecution, will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant knew he was selling stolen property from Tater Chips by calling 3 witnesses to the stand. First, you will hear from Ms. Kelly Adams. Ms. Kelly Adams is a current supply chain supervisor at Tater Chips who hired Ms. Pentito. And Ms. Adams, and you are going to learn that Ms. Adams discovered that at least 25 processing chips went missing under Ms. Pentito's care. You will also learn that neither she nor Tater Chips never did any business with Sophisticated Systems. So the defendant's claims that Ms. Pentito was buying the chips only show that the defendant knew he was selling stolen property. Next, you will hear from Detective Adrian Moltisanti. Detective Adrian Moltisanti is an experienced and knowledgeable member of the Idaho State Police Department. And Detective Moltisanti will offer 2 facts. That 1, Ms. Pentito was honest, especially when it came to the defendant's manipulation over her. And 2, of the evidence she uncovered in her undercover investigation in the Sophisticated Systems workshop run by the defendant. Evidence like sales and inventory summaries that will only show the defendant knew he was selling computers with Tater Chips, computer chips in them. Lastly, you will hear from Ms. Rowan Pentito herself. Ms. Pentito will speak to you about her business relationship with the defendant, but not only her business relationship with the defendant, but also her friendship with the defendant. How the defendant, her friend and business partner manipulated her into stealing processing chips once he knew of Ms. Pentito's job as a courier for Tater Chips, and offered her payments under the guise of reimbursements for stealing chips. A payment that will only show you how the defendant knew that she was stealing the chips. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to seek justice for the state of Idaho. And throughout this trial, we will prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant knew he was selling stolen property from Tater Chips by showing you nothing but the facts. The defense will call 3 witnesses to the stand: Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum, Dr. Auden Vera, and the defendant. You will learn that Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum's facts were funded by the defendant as he took on Ms. Ford's case at a reduced fee, and that Dr. Vera's facts were never facts at all because she based them on her own opinions. So at the end of this trial, we ask you to find the defendant, Mr. Kingsley Ford, guilty of selling stolen property. Thank you.
Thank you. The defense may make their opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honors. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, counsel, and may it please the court. This is a case about a promise broken, a dream ended, and my client Kingsley Ford's life forever shattered. Today, we gather in this courtroom to unravel a tangled web of deceit and deception, and that innocent man's life, dreams shattered into pieces. My client Kingsley Ford innocently stands before you, being accused of knowingly selling computers with stolen Tater Chip property in it. Today's proceedings are based on a dream ended, a dream that my client Kingsley Ford told to Miss Pentito, and Miss Pentito took that dream and shattered it into a million pieces. Kingsley Ford and Miss Pentito made a promise to each other. That promise consisted of Miss Pentito purchasing Tater Chip processors, and Kingsley would then reimburse her the same amount that she used to buy them. But what Kingsley didn't know was that Miss Pentito went behind his back, broke their promise and their trust, and pocketed that money that Kingsley was using to reimburse her. Never did she once use the money Kingsley reimbursed her with to buy processors from Tater Chips. Today, if the prosecution calls someone who worked at Tater Chips to the stand, they will confess to not having any knowledge of Kingsley Ford nor his company, Sophisticated Systems. Because of this promise being broken, a dream was just ended, and this innocent man's life was just shattered. Today, you will hear from 3 people on the defense's side. Each of them will attest to the kind of man Kingsley Ford truly is. He is a man with a good heart, a compassionate heart, and a heart for others rather for himself. At this trial, the prosecution will attempt to paint my client as a willing participant in a criminal enterprise who they say is the real mastermind behind all this. But where is the indisputable proof? Where are the documents, the recordings, the tangible evidence, and the witnesses who can attest clearly to Kingsley Ford's guilt? They simply do not exist. They will ask you to assume Kingsley's guilt based on vague evidence and the word of a woman who has every reason to shift blame away from herself. They will bring up that my client is a lazy businessman who did not do his due diligence by keeping records up to date for his business and rather only using trust. But here's the thing. My client is a college student, and his business was part of a class project for his business management course. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because while he was creating the startup business, he's still young and learning the ways of running a business. Just because he is young, inexperienced, and overwhelmed does not mean at all that he would ever break the laws for his own personal gain. After all, he never kept a penny, nor wanted to keep the profits his business would make for himself. Unlike Miss Pentito, he was always focused on putting the money he would make back into his business. Today, the prosecution has the burden of proof to bear in this case. In order for my client, Kingsley Ford, to be found guilty, they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Kingsley Ford did in fact knowingly sell stolen property owned by Tater Chips. But let us not forget the cornerstone of our legal system, the presumption of innocence. Kingsley Ford is innocent until proven guilty, and the burden rests squarely on the prosecution's shoulders to meet that standard. At the end of this trial, after both counsels present our cases, you will have story A and story B. Story A being the prosecution side, story B being our defense side. And if you believe both stories are true, that is what I call reasonable doubts. And once you have that reasonable doubt in your hearts, that is when you know and you have to find my client, Kingsley Ford, not guilty. Once again, Your Honor and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as you proceed through this trial, I trust that you will hold the prosecution accountable to that burden and demand nothing less than the truth, and deliver the only reasonable verdict, and the verdict that my client Kingsley Ford is innocent. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the opening statements. Is the prosecution ready to begin its case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed. You may call your first witness.
Prosecution would now like to call on the first witness to the stand, Ms. Kelly Adams.
Kelly Adams, please take the stand.
What is your name?
Good evening. My name is Kelly Adams.
Ms. Adams, where are you employed?
Currently, I'm employed at Tater Chips.
So what is Tater Chips?
So Tater Chips is a global company which outsources CPUs, and then we distribute these CPUs to our various local, regional, national, and international partners.
And what are CPUs?
So CPUs are these incredibly small, no more than 3 inches on either side chips used for computers, and they're the brains of any computer device.
And so how much do these CPUs usually cost?
At Tater Chips, they can cost from around $250 to $1,500.
And so what does your company, Tater Chips, do with these CPUs?
So our company, we receive the inventory of the CPUs, and then we go ahead and distribute them to our various clients.
Ms. Adams, what is your position at Tater Chips?
For the past 18 months, I've been the supply chain supervisor.
And as a supply chain supervisor, what are some of your duties?
Well, some of my duties include hiring couriers, managing the agents, as well as tracking local inventory and coordinating logistics that concern the local inventory.
So, Ms. Adams, why are you here today?
Well, I'm here today because our inventory at Tater Chips, as well as our former employee, again, who no longer works for us, Rowan Pentito, are involved in this case.
Can you please explain Rowan Pentito's former employment with Tater Chips?
Of course. So I hired Rowan in February 2021. He was punctual and very knowledgeable about the product. And unfortunately, I had to let him go in October 2021.
As a Tater Chips courier, what were some of Ms. Pentito's duties?
So our couriers typically, they meet the shipment at the port, and they go ahead and escort them back to our Lewiston branch. Occasionally, though, couriers would take the inventory directly to the customer.
And what kind of benefits, if any, did Ms. Pentito receive as an employee of Tater Chips?
So all of our employees do receive a 25% discount on the CPUs, but Ms. Pentito did not avail of this discount.
Ms. Adams, why does Ms. Pentito no longer work for Tater Chips?
So in September of 2021, I noticed that customers' orders weren't being fulfilled, so I decided to do some digging.
And what did you discover?
So I discovered that there are about 42 missing chips over a list of 15 orders, which Ms. Pentito was involved in 10 of the orders where 25 out of the 42 chips were missing.
Is there a complete listing of these orders with missing chips, Ms. Adams?
Yes, I compiled a list.
So if I were to show you this list you created, would you be able to recognize it?
Oh, absolutely.
Your Honor, may I now retrieve Exhibit 1 from the table?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I am now approaching the opposing counsel with this exhibit. Yes. Your Honor, I am now approaching my witness with this exhibit.
You may.
Ms. Adams, do you recognize this?
Yes, this is the inventory of missing chips I compiled.
And how do you know that this is the inventory that you compiled?
Oh, so I made this because Detective Mosanti asked me to create a list.
And when did you create this?
So I created this list in October of 2021.
And does your company keep inventory like this in the course of regularly conducted activity of your business?
Yes, we regularly keep inventory lists.
Do you regularly make copies of inventories?
Yes, we do.
And is this inventory a trustable source of information, Ms. Adams?
It is a trustable source.
Your Honor, at this time, I now enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
There being no objection, Exhibit 1 is entered into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Adams, prior to creating your inventory report, were you aware that your company was missing processors?
So like I said,
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, this is not a leading question because this question does not call for a response. I am merely asking if Ms. Adams knew about the missing chips prior to creating this inventory report.
Your Honor, if I may, the question did elicit a specific yes or no and suggested answers.
The objection sustained. Please rephrase your question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Adams, prior to creating the inventory report, did you notice anything different about your inventory?
Not necessarily. Our chips are incredibly small, so sometimes they can fall out of the packaging easily in transit.
So what was different about this case?
So in this case, a significant amount of chips went missing, which for me as a supervisor, I had felt the need to address this and get to the bottom of why a significant amount of chips went missing.
From Exhibit 1, can you tell us how many chips went missing?
Sure. So in this inventory list, a total of 42 chips went missing.
And who are the couriers responsible for the orders of missing chips?
Here there are 3. So Ellen Ridley, Rowan Pentito, and Paul King.
And what was Ms. Pentito's explanation for the missing orders?
So originally, in September 2021, I asked Ms. Pentito about the missing chips. She'd brushed it off. I went ahead and asked her a second time where she confessed to stealing the chips for her side gig, Sophisticated Systems.
And what did you know about Sophisticated Systems at the time of Ms. Pentito's confession to you?
At this time, I didn't know about Sophisticated Systems. We hadn't done any business together, us being Tater Chips and Sophisticated Systems.
Ms. Adams, you mentioned earlier that it is your job to track local inventory.
Yes, that is correct. Among my other responsibilities.
Can you explain in specific the process of how you keep track of local inventory?
Sure. So when the shipment does come in, the paperwork comes to me. I go ahead and receive the paperwork, input it into our inventory, and then file it away.
And the paperwork from the shipments is from whom?
It's from the shipping companies themselves.
Are you familiar with a packing slip that accompanies the chips from your company?
I should be familiar with it, yes.
So if I were to show you a packing slip, would you be able to recognize it?
Yeah, I should be able to.
Your Honor, may I now retrieve Exhibit 6 from the table?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I am now approaching the opposing counsel with this exhibit. Yes, Exhibit 6. Thank you. Your Honor, I'm now approaching my witness with this exhibit. Ms. Adams, do you recognize receiving this specific document?
This looks like a packing slip, but it has my name on it. I don't remember ever receiving this document, no.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions. May I now retrieve the exhibits and bring it back to the table?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the defendant wish to cross-examine the witness? Do you wish to cross-examine the witness? You may.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
First things first, Miss Adams. You testified earlier that you don't personally know Kingsley Ford, correct?
No, I had no prior knowledge about the defendant.
Right, and Tater Chips has never made any transactions with Sophisticated Systems or Rowan Concito, is that correct?
No transactions between Tater Chips or Sophisticated Systems.
And no business deals either, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now let's move forward, Miss Adams. You're a supervisor at Tater Chips, isn't that true?
Yes, for the past 18 months, I've been the supply chain supervisor.
Right, yet you didn't receive any college education, right?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. I don't see how Miss Adams's college education relates to her employment at Tater Chips and how she's the supply chain supervisor.
Your Honor, if I may, this is relevant to the case at hand as it is important in establishing the credibility of Kelly Adams or impeachment in regards to this case.
The objection is overruled. She may answer the question.
Thank you, Your
Please
Honor.
restate your question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You didn't receive any college education, is that right?
No, I didn't go to college.
Thank you. And in fact, you even got blackballed from the college recommendation system, correct?
Well, I was 18. It's actually so embarrassing.
So that's a yes, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. May the counsel let my witness finish her answer to his question before he moves on?
Your Honor, if I may, the questions I am asking are eliciting a specific yes or a specific no, and then the witness can move on to sort of speak or elaborate.
The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You got blackballed from the college recommendation system, correct?
I wasn't able to attend college.
Right, and this was all because you had someone help you hack into the college application system, right?
It's an embarrassing time for me. I asked.
So
one of
that's a
my
yes,
friends-
correct?
I did ask one of my friends to help me. Looking back, it's not something I'm proud of, but definitely something that.
Thank you. Now I want to talk to you about your duties at Tater Chips.
Sure.
As the supply chain supervisor, you had a lot of paperwork, correct?
Yeah, you know what? It comes with the job. Lots of paperwork.
This paperwork is important for inventory, correct?
Yes.
Yet you procrastinate with your paperwork, correct?
Like I said, there is a lot of paperwork. There's 3 supervisors, and
Thank you, but
paperwork-
please answer my question with a yes or a no, Miss Adams.
I would say that is a lot of paperwork, so sometimes it can get a little bit jumbled around.
That wasn't my question. I was asking if you procrastinate with your paperwork.
I think that like I said, there's a lot of paperwork, so maybe it can get piled up.
So that's a yes, correct?
You could say that.
Okay. Now I'd like to move on. You first initially hired Rowan as a courier, is that correct?
Yeah, in February 2021, he was very punctual and knowledgeable.
Right, and you eventually figured out that chips were missing from your inventory, is that right?
Yeah, I noticed that a significant amount were missing, and
And you confronted Rowan about these missing chips, right?
I did. Yes.
This happened twice, correct?
So the first time, like I said, he didn't. She kind of brushed it off and was.
So Rowan lied to you the first time, correct?
She brushed it off. She wasn't truthful about.
Right, and he only confessed the second time, correct?
Yeah, he told me everything that he stole the chips and what he stole them for.
Is it true that he only confessed after already getting an attorney?
I believe that's the order.
Okay. I'd like to retrieve from the bailiff what has been marked for what has been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 1.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may.
On this inventory list, the couriers for each delivery with missing chips are listed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Rowan Concito is on this list, right?
Yep.
Ellen Ridley is on this list?
That is correct. Ellen Ridley is on this list.
And the name Paul King is also on this list, correct?
Yes, it is. That's correct.
So you interviewed Rowan Concito about these missing chips, right?
I did interview Rowan. I questioned him and asked him a few, like I said, questions.
Right. Did you ever interview anyone else besides Rowan Concito?
Well, I interviewed Rowan, and he's what the case is about today, and so I'm not really at liberty to discuss.
Did you ever interview anyone else besides Rowan Concito, as there are 2 other names on this list, Miss Adams?
I only interviewed Rowan Pentito.
Thank you.
Let's move on. These thefts by Rowan have had consequences on your job, correct?
I mean, there's always room for being reprimanded or something like that. So consequences, I guess you could say consequences.
Isn't it true that now your job is on the line?
I don't know if I would say my job is on the line. Like I said, consequences could mean anything from being reprimanded and really.
So Ms. Adams, you're here today so that justice can be served, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, isn't it true that you don't care who gets held accountable as long as someone does?
I care that who gets accountable for committing the crime because our
So you care if either Kingsley Ford or Rowan Pentito were to be held accountable?
I want whoever committed the crime to get accountable because we did end up losing a big profit from our inventory, and I just, like I said,
Yes.
I just want whoever committed the crime to be held accountable for the.
Thank you. Do you have any further questions?
Permission to redirect, Your Honor.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Adams, the council brought up earlier your college application system scandal. Why did you ask your friend to hack into the college application system?
Yes, like I said before, I'm so embarrassed by it. It was a time in my life where I felt that I was at a disadvantage. And, I thought being young and inexperienced and, overwhelmed with the whole college application process that I needed a way in. And so, yeah, I asked my friend to help me, and I did acknowledge that I forged the letter. I'm not proud of it, but I feel like I have gained experience and worked my way to becoming better and more knowledgeable in my job.
And at the company Tater Chips, how many supervisors are there?
So in the Lewiston branch where I work at, which covers the whole Western United States, currently there are 3 supervisors.
And do you only handle the paperwork for the company?
Well, paperwork is a big chunk of what I do, but I also hire the couriers, manage the agents, and then coordinate logistics between the shipping companies as well as the customers and our clients.
Ms. Adams, how come you never interviewed other couriers, as you said earlier?
Well, I interviewed Rowan, who the case is at hand, who the case is about today, and I'm also not really at liberty to discuss the other 2, so.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
The defense would like to recross.
You may.
There were still 2 other names on the list, isn't that correct, Ms. Adams?
That is correct.
And you still didn't, despite being the supply chain supervisor, you didn't interview them?
I interviewed Rowan.
And that's only Rowan?
That is Rowan, and I got he confessed to me, and so that's why we're here today.
Questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. The witness may step down.
Yeah.
The prosecution may call their next witness.
The prosecution now calls up Adrian Maltasanti to the stand.
Please take the stand. You may begin.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Detective Adrian Maltasanti, and I've been working at the Idaho State Police District 2 office in Lewiston for 7 years now.
So how did you join the police force?
Well, I was back in 2010. I joined the US Navy after high school graduation, and I even got to travel to Guam and Saipan. And then, of course, I worked in the research detachment on Lake Oriel, where I learned and gained experience in computer hardware.
So what did you do after the Navy?
So after 4 years in the Navy, I attended the Post Academy, where I learned law enforcement basics and state Idaho law. And then I spent 5 years as a patrol officer. And after much time and dedication, I got promoted to detective, which I've been doing for the past 2 years.
So why are you here today, Detective?
So back in October 2021, the Moscow police informed me that someone with an attorney turned themselves in for theft, and they believed our office was better equipped to handle this case.
What happened after your office took this case?
I met with the lawyer and we worked out an agreement to give their client immunity from prosecution only if they told the full truth and helped get a conviction for this crime.
Who was granted immunity?
This client was Rowan Pentito.
Why did you grant Ms. Pentito immunity?
She came to me first confessing to her crimes, and she even admitted to stealing chips from a company called Tater Chips. And Ms. Pentito and her partner Kingsley Ford would use these chips for their company called Sophisticated Systems.
So how did you conduct your investigation for Ms. Pentito?
I interviewed Ms. Pentito, Ms. Kelly Adams, and Kingsley, but he refused to talk to me. And then I even went undercover and gathered evidence from there.
So who did you interview after Ms. Pentito?
I interviewed Kelly Adams and I asked her to provide me with a missing chips inventory list, which was dated from March to August 2021.
And from your recollection, what did you learn about the missing chips?
I learned from looking at the inventory list and that Ms. Pentito's name was on it multiple times, and counting the number of missing chips on it, Ms. Pentito was a courier for 25 of those chips.
And so what was your next step in your investigation?
Of course, to make it a stronger case, I hit it from all possible angles by gaining approval from my captain to go undercover at Sophisticated Systems.
How did you begin your undercover investigation at Sophisticated Systems?
As agreed upon, I would pose as a computer science major at the University of Idaho. And then Ms. Pentito helped convince the defendant to let me work at Sophisticated Systems.
And what did you do while working at Sophisticated Systems?
When I first got there, it was a complete mess. So I was in charge of organizing the inventory, which helped me keep track of the computer chips coming in.
And what happened while working at Sophisticated Systems?
Not long after, Ms. Pentito slowly stopped coming to work, which gave me more knowledge about how the company worked.
And from becoming more familiar with the company, what did you observe about how they obtained computer parts?
So one day, Kingsley Ford came into the workshop carrying computer parts alone. Then he explained to me how Rowan had delivered them outside. And he had even said that doesn't really matter to me where Rowan gets what we need as long as we get it.
But how did you find out where these chips came from?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How did you find out where these chips came from?
So while I was undercover, Mr. Ford eventually sold me a laptop on March 24, 2022. And he told me that it had a chip from Tater Chips in it. And so that made it even more expensive, $1,200, but he gave it to me at a discounted price for $600.
But how did you confirm that that chip was indeed from the company Tater Chips?
So I opened the laptop, took out the chip, and the insignia and serial number matched a packing slip lying around Mr. Ford's workshop.
And if I showed you the packing slip you just mentioned, would you be able to identify it?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, may I retrieve Exhibit 6 from the table?
You may.
Your Honor, I'm now showing defense counsel. Your Honor, would you like to see this exhibit?
No, you may just give it to the witness.
Your Honor, I'm now approaching the witness. Detective, what does this packing slip detail?
This seized packing slip details the same chip that I found in the insignia.
Objection, Your Honor, assuming facts with evidence, this exhibit is not admitted into evidence, therefore you can't testify to facts contained in it.
Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Detective, how do you recognize this document?
It is a seized packing slip from Mr. Ford's workshop.
And how do you recognize this?
When I obtained my search warrant, I seized this packing slip.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to enter Exhibit 6 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 6 is admitted into evidence.
What did you learn from this packing slip?
This packing slip lists the same chip that was sold to me by Mr. Ford.
And what is the month listed on the packing slip?
It says September.
And from the inventory report for Miss Adams, how many chips went missing under Miss Pentito?
The inventory report listed 25 chips, and adding this seized packing slip with the chip, it would be 26 now.
And what were the months stated on the inventory report again?
March to August 2021.
Thank you, Detective. And other than the packing slip, what other evidence did you collect?
While I was undercover, I took photos of the computer chips in detail, and then I even gathered some more evidence, yes.
And so what did you do with all the evidence you compiled?
I compiled after I had enough information, I obtained a search warrant to seize the evidence from Mr. Ford's workshop.
And what items did you seize?
I seized the packing slip,
Objection, Your Honor.
computers.
Seized facts on evidence. Exhibit number 4, the search warrant, is not admitted as a trial exhibit yet, and therefore she cannot testify to any items that were seized and listed in that exhibit.
Your Honor, if I may, I can rephrase my question, ask my witness from her recollection, the item she seized from the defendant's workshop.
If you rephrase the question, you may. Objections overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Detective, from your recollection, what were some of the items seized from the workshop?
Yes, so I remember from the seized paper, I seized computers, some tax documents, and all the evidence that was lying around Mr. Ford's workshop, like the packing slip too.
And what happened to all the items you seized?
To be more efficient, I gathered all this evidence and compiled a sales summary for Sophisticated Systems, which was dated from July to October 2021.
And in conclusion of your investigation, what stood out for you?
Objection, Your Honor. It's a vague question which is outlined against in the law trial.
Your Honor, I can rephrase my question.
Please rephrase your question. You may be seated. Thank you.
And from your investigation, what did you confirm from all of the evidence?
So one day, the defendant said, "Siri, call Rowan," and I could already tell from being undercover that there was a lot of tension between Ms. Pentito and the defendant. So during this call, the defendant said, "You're our partner in this business, and you need to pull your weight. We either sink or swim together."
Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Does the prosecution want to cross-examine the witness?
It's the defense wishes.
I'm sorry, I misspoke.
The defense wishes to cross-examine this witness, but first, maybe confirm how much time we have left for cross-examination.
You may.
May I use the well?
You may.
Now, Ms. Moltisanti, you interviewed Miss Kelly Adams for this case, correct?
Yes, I interviewed Miss Kelly Adams, Miss Pentito, and I even tried to talk to Kingsley, but he refused to talk to me.
Thank you. But isn't it true that you testified that Kelly Adams gave you a list after this interview, correct?
Yes, I asked her to provide me with a missing chips inventory list.
Right, and this list was dated from, as you testified, March to August of 2021, correct?
Yes, Miss Kelly Adams provided me with the missing chips from March to August.
Right. Your Honor, may I please use the witness statement to refresh and recollect the witness's memory for impeachment purposes?
You may.
May I approach the bailiff?
You may.
Please let the record reflect that I am retrieving page 14 of the affidavit, lines 101 to 104.
What page is that?
Page 14. Your Honor, may I approach the witness with her affidavit?
You may.
Sorry, Your Honor, may I ask opposing counsel to state the lines that that he'll be showing my witness?
As I stated earlier, it's page 14, lines 101 to 104.
Thank you.
Now, may you please read that to yourself?
What pages again?
Page 14,
mean-
lines 101 to 104. May you please read that to yourself? Please notify me when you're done. Thank you, Ms. Moltisanti. Now, you testified that Kelly Adams gave you a list that included all the missing ships from March to August of 2021, correct?
Yes, and I admit that in my affidavit, I did say February to October 2021, but she still provided me with the list from March to August 2020.
Right, so you didn't know exactly the dates of what she was giving you?
When I had asked her
Objection, Your Honor,
earlier-
speculation. The opposing counsel is speculating on whether whether Detective Adrian Moltisanti knew about the months that are not indicated from her affidavit.
Your Honor, Ms. Moltisanti is a competent witness. Each witness is competent to testify, and she did write in her affidavit, and she did admit that the list apparently Kelly was supposed to give was from February of 2021 to October of 2021, and that's just what I'm asking about.
Your Honor, if I may, Detective Moltisanti only received this inventory report and did not compile this inventory report, so therefore she would not have complete knowledge of the months that should be included in this exhibit.
Your Honor, even if she does not know which months should be included, she still testified that in her affidavit, she said that she received a list from February to October of 2021.
The objection's overruled. You may continue.
Thank you. So,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Moltisanti, what you wrote there is entirely inconsistent with what you testified to earlier, correct?
Well, I admit to saying different months, but Miss Kelly Adams provided me with the missing chips where she works from.
Right, but Your Honor, may I please retrieve what's been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 1?
You may.
I already have it.
Oh, thank you. Now, Ms. Moltisanti, who's the lead investigator listed on that exhibit?
I am.
And you spent several months investigating this case, correct?
Yes, and I went undercover.
Right, so you knew exactly how many ships, you knew basic information about the ships that were stolen, correct?
From the inventory list, and while I was working, I kept track of, I took photos of the computer chips that were coming in.
Right, yet, didn't you testify earlier that you uncovered a stolen Tater Chips processor from a Phoenix laptop sold to you by Kingsley Ford, correct?
Yes, that matched the packing slip found in Mr. Ford's workshop.
Right, and if you were to see this packing slip, would you recognize it?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, may I retrieve what's been admitted, marked for identification purposes as exhibit number 6?
You may.
I also have exhibit number 6.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Moltisanti, the order date listed on that packing slip is listed from September, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yet you didn't include this on exhibit number 1?
Well, I wasn't the one who compiled the inventory list, so Kelly Adams.
Right, but you were the lead investigator for this case, correct?
I was the lead investigator, and that's why I asked Miss Kelly Adams, who works at Tater Chips, to compile this missing chip list.
Right, but Kelly Adams didn't include the missing chip from September onto that list, correct?
Well, again, I found this seized packing slip in Mr. Ford's workshop, so.
Right, but she didn't apparently know that chip was stolen because September isn't at all there, correct?
Yes, she never received this, I guess.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Do you wish to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Detective Multisanti, why were the months February, September, and October not listed in the inventory report?
Well, in February,
Objection, Your Honor. Redirect is only supposed to be in the scope of cross-examination, and I did not ask about February or October 2021 and why they weren't included in this list.
Your Honor, if I may, opposing counsel did in their cross-examination state the months February to October, therefore those months are included in the cross-examination.
You raised the issue of the accuracy of the list, so your objection's overruled. You may
Thank you, Your
continue.
Honor. I'll restate my question. Detective Multisanti, why were the months February, October, and September not included in this inventory report?
well, in September, the packing slip was found in Mr. Ford's workshop, so I assume that Miss Kelly Adams didn't have it. And then in October, that's when I went through my undercover investigation.
And who compiled this inventory list?
Miss Kelly Adams.
Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Do you have anything for? You may ask.
May I request how much time we have left for cross-examination?
5 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Multisanti, you knew that there were some months missing from Kelly Adams's report, correct?
Well, she provided me with the months that she had collected the data for.
Right, yet you confirmed that a chip from September was stolen from Tater Chips, correct?
Yes, with the packing slip and the refurbished laptop that Mr. Ford sold to me.
Right, yet you didn't choose to confirm that with Kelly Adams?
Well, while I'm undercover, I'm not allowed to tell them the information during that case, but I did seize it when I obtained a search warrant.
Right, but isn't it true that you also described Kelly Adams as, isn't it true that you also think of Kelly Adams as someone who's disorganized?
Objection, Your Honor, improper character evidence under Bill 404B.
Your Honor, I did not list any specific instance of conduct, but I'm offering this evidence to prove that Kelly Adams had an untruthful testimony because she was so disorganized, and opinions are admissible to prove truthfulness about a witness.
Your Honor, if I may, I'm also asserting this under Bill 404A for a pertinent character trait. Opposing counsel is saying that because Kelly Adams was disorganized then, she is disorganized now.
Your Honor, under rules 607, 608, and 609, a witness's character for truthfulness may be attacked in cross-examination through opinions, which is what I'm doing.
Your Honor, if I may, the prosecution has not attacked Kelly Adams on her character for truthfulness.
Your Honor, that's what I'm doing.
But Your Honor, the prosecution has not opened the door.
Your Honor, the prosecution.
The objection is sustained. You
Thank you.
ask a question regarding character.
Now, Ms. Multisanti, in the end, you trusted evidence collected by Kelly Adams, correct?
She provided me with what she had in her data, yes.
Yet you testified that some of that evidence was not including missing chips, correct?
I'm confused on your question.
Yet you testified that exhibit number 1 didn't include missing chips, some missing chips, correct?
Well, I wouldn't know exactly what month because I don't work at Tater Chips, so she would only provide me with what she had.
But she didn't provide you with the month of February, correct?
No, she only dated the inventory list from March to August.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Anything else?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. The witness may step down. The prosecution may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the prosecution now calls upon Ms. Rowan to continue. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Rowan Pentito. I'm a computer science major at the University of Idaho, and I was formerly business partners of Sophisticated System with my friend Kingsley Ford.
And why are you here today, Ms. Pentito?
I'm here today to tell the truth. Kingsley, he manipulated me into stealing chips for tater chips for Sophisticated Systems.
How did you first meet the defendant?
I met Kingsley during my freshman year in college. We shared several general education courses and also interests like hiking and often hung out in his dorm room together. I thought me and Kingsley were friends. I trusted him.
And Ms. Pentito, what is Sophisticated Systems?
Sophisticated Systems was Kingsley's idea. I was amazed that he wanted to create a business that refurbished computers from spare parts and sell them to college students for cheap. I was inspired and I wanted to support my friend.
And how did you get involved with Sophisticated Systems?
Well, when I was younger, I would build computers from spare parts, and Kingsley took an interest in this, and he approached me during my sophomore year in college with a business proposal.
And how did you respond to this business proposal?
Well, I was reluctant, and it took a lot of convincing. And Kingsley promised that we'd be good business partners, as I would handle the techie side and he would handle the inventory and finance with his business major. So I eventually gave in and accepted.
And why did you join Sophisticated Systems?
I joined Sophisticated Systems because I was struggling financially and I needed a good source of income, but sadly, I was never really given a proper salary at Sophisticated Systems.
And why didn't you get a proper salary?
Well, Kingsley informed me that he couldn't pay me a proper salary, and as business partners, we could split profits 50-50. But he also wanted to put everything back into the business, so there wasn't much.
So during your time at Sophisticated Systems, did you work anywhere else?
I did. I worked part-time job as a tater chips courier.
Your Honor, under Rule 401, relevance has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without evidence. And Ms. Pentito's employment during her time at Tater Chips and any additional employment is necessary to lay the foundation as to how she is involved in this case.
Maybe heard.
Yes.
I don't see how her past jobs are relevant or would make the case more or less probable.
Yeah.
The defendant knowingly selling computers with stolen signatures.
Your Honor, may I respond? This is relevant as to how Ms. Pentito would establish any additional salary or salary at all in the business. And this business is involved in whether or not the defendant knowingly sold stolen property. So Ms. Pentito's salary and any additional or any salary at all is necessary to the case at hand.
I'll give you a little leeway since you say it's for foundation. But if you go too far, he may object again.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I repeat my question?
Yes.
So during your time at Sophisticated Systems, did you work anywhere else?
I did. I worked a part-time job as a tater chips courier when I was hired by Ms. Kelly Adams.
And what do you do as a courier for Tater Chips?
As a courier, I go to shipping ports, pick up processor chip shipments, and then deliver them to Tater Chips Lewiston office or to customers directly.
And how long did you work at Tater Chips?
I worked at Tater Chips from February to October of 2021.
And why did you stop working for Tater Chips in October 2021?
That was when Kelly Adams discovered that I was stealing chips for Sophisticated Systems.
And why did you steal processing chips?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic hit Sophisticated Systems hard. We had issues getting computer parts, some inventory issues, and Kingsley, once he knew I had a job as a Tater Chips courier, he had an idea.
And what was the defendant's idea?
Kingsley's idea was to collect a few processors from each shipment and then use them to refurbish our computers. He would then use this money to pay off a $50,000 loan that we took out during the pandemic.
And did you agree or disagree to the defendant's idea?
It took a lot of convincing. I was really hesitant. I was only convinced when Kingsley offered to pay me.
And could you explain how the defendant offered to pay you?
Yeah, so Kingsley said I can write checks off as, sorry, I'm trying to recall. Kingsley said I can write you a check for each time you get some processors, That way, we both win. I get cheaper chips and you get paid.
And did the defendant say anything else?
Yes, he said, plus I can write off these checks as a business expense. That way I don't need to pay for employee taxes.
So what did you do after hearing this?
Well, I thought Kingsley was being a good friend by having a plan, and he promised me that everything would be okay. So I gave into his idea for stealing chips for sophisticated systems.
And what was your intention with regard to the stolen chips?
I felt guilty, but I figured that we would stop stealing after things were okay financially with sophisticated systems. And I also wanted to pay back the chips that I stole with my discount that I got,
And how much is this discount?
25%.
And did you ever use this employee discount?
No, I never got the chance to.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation. The witness never testified where she got the employee discount.
I believe she did. Your objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And from your recollection, how many checks did you receive from the defendant as payment?
I received a total of 5.
And what is the total amount of these checks that you received?
They add up to be $4,685.50.
And do you recall what months you received those checks?
April, May, June, July, August.
And what was the last check that was dated to you, Ms. Pentito?
In August.
And when did you stop working at Tater Chips?
In October 2021.
And were you ever issued checks for stealing chips in September?
No, I didn't.
And were you ever issued checks for stealing chips in October?
Well, I was fired in October and the last check was in August, so no.
And what happened after you stole chips from Tater Chips?
I got caught. Kelly Adams approached me about missing chips in September, but I denied stealing anything.
And what did you do after denying this?
I felt really guilty for lying to Kelly. So I got a lawyer, I confessed to my crimes, and then after I confessed to Kelly for stealing the chips, she fired me in October.
And what happened after you were fired?
The investigation into sophisticated systems in Kingsley Ford began with Detective Moltisanti.
And how did you help the police with this investigation?
I tried to be as cooperative as I could be because I wanted to take accountability for my actions, and I realized I could help the police department catch Kingsley for his crimes. So I helped Detective Moltisanti go undercover for Sophisticated Systems Workshop. And during this time, I turned over all the money that Kingsley was giving me over to law enforcement.
Thank you, Ms. Pentito. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Does defense want to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, sir.
You may.
Ms. Pentito, Kelly Adams approached you twice about stealing chips, correct?
She did.
And the first time she approached you, you denied knowing anything about the missing chips, correct?
Because I was completely sure.
But did you deny anything, knowing anything about the missing chips?
Please allow the witness to respond to his question fully and methodically.
Your Honor, may be heard. Your Honor, I'm asking the witness a leading question, which the question elicits the answer in my question, and she is not giving me an answer.
But Your Honor, may I respond? The counsel is not allowing the witness to fully respond to the answer, and while I do understand he's allowed to ask leading questions, I would just please request that the witness is allowed to answer his question.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Yeah, please give the witness time to answer.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. So, Ms. Pentito, the first time Kelly Adams approached you, you denied knowing anything about the missing chips, correct?
Yeah, and that's because I was shocked.
Thank you. So you lied to Kelly?
And I didn't mean to. I was.
But my question is, did you lie to Kelly?
Sadly, I did, and I regret
Thank you.
it.
And after the first time you lied to her, you started looking for a way out of trouble, correct?
I wouldn't say that. I confessed to my crimes because I felt guilty.
So it's your testimony today that you, after the first time you lied to her, you did not start looking for a way out of trouble.
Yes.
You did or you did not?
Sorry, I'm a little confused. Can you?
After the first time you lied to Kelly Adams, you started looking for a way out of trouble, correct?
Because I felt guilty.
So is that a yes?
I felt guilty.
Thank you. And while you were looking for a way out, you gained an immunity agreement, correct?
after my lawyer negotiated bond for.
Thank you. And this immunity agreement solely depends on you testifying against those involved in any criminal case regarding the Tater Chip thefts, correct?
That and to tell the truth and aid.
Thank you. And Kingsley Ford would be part of those involved in any criminal case against Tater Chips, correct?
I believe so, yes.
You and Kingsley were both financially struggling during your time at the University of Idaho, correct?
Yeah, we often bonded.
And you have been assembling computers since middle school, right?
Yes, I have.
And Mr. Ford asked you to join Sophisticated Systems because of your knowledge on how to build and assemble computers, right?
Yes.
And when you first joined Sophisticated Systems, your job was to only build refurbished computers, correct?
To handle the techie side, yes.
And you wanted to join Sophisticated Systems to develop more income, right?
Yeah, but sadly, I was never really.
And you said you are more than happy to develop another income stream with Kingsley, correct?
Because he's my friend, yeah.
So you had a choice to join Sophisticated Systems, correct?
I did. Yeah.
And no one ever physically forced you to join Sophisticated Systems with Kingsley Ford?
Not physically, but
Thank you.
mentally.
Now let's move on and talk more about your company. Sophisticated Systems was still an active business during the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
It was, yes.
And around this time, there was an increased demand for computers among college students, right?
Yes,
And because of this, Kingsley wanted to put all the profits back into the company, right?
he did, yes.
And you were reluctant at first, correct?
I was struggling financially, of course it would be.
And you disagreed with Ford on this point, correct?
I did, yes.
You disagreed because you wanted all the money for yourself?
No, I wouldn't.
So why did you disagree?
Because I was thinking about the financial burden and,
So you wanted money? It's okay if you can't answer that. I'll move on.
Council testifying, may I please ask the council that he ask questions of the need for any personal commentary.
Your Honor, I'll move on.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Pentito, after Sophisticated Systems invested your profits back into the company, Sophisticated Systems sales skyrocketed, correct?
it did as Kingsley.
Thank you. And Kingsley asked you to authorize a $50,000 loan for Sophisticated Systems, right?
Yes,
And this was to quickly rebuild inventory?
yes,
And just to be clear, you and Kingsley were both liable for this $50,000 loan, right?
we were as a.
And rebuilding inventory would also include computer processor chips, correct?
I believe some, yes.
Thank you. So isn't it true that it was hard to obtain computer chips because of supply chain issues related to COVID?
Yes, that's true.
And because of this shortage, it was difficult to replenish the processor chips in Sophisticated Systems inventory, right?
Yeah, because prices.
And at the
were-
time of these supply chain issues, you were apparently put under huge financial stress, right?
I was, yes.
And a factor in this was the $50,000 loan, right?
It was, yes.
And Kingsley was also liable for this loan too, right?
He was, yes.
And during this time, Kingsley suggested putting every cent you guys made from your company back into Sophisticated Systems, right?
He did, yes.
And this made you mad?
I wouldn't say
Objection, Your Honor,
that.
relevance, I do not see how if whether or not this loan made the witness mad is relevant to the case at hand.
Your Honor, this shows the witness's motive to commit such crimes.
The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So let me ask that again. This make you mad?
I wouldn't say that.
So it made you happy?
It made me distressed and
Okay, thank you. And this made you distressed because you said you were both sitting on a gold mine and Kingsley wouldn't even let you have a nugget, correct?
yeah, he was.
Thank you. So let's move on. Shortly after this, you became a courier at Tater Chips, correct?
I did because I was.
And this job meant you worked directly with computer chips?
Yes,
And your company needed these computer chips to build functional computers, correct?
we did, yes.
And your boss at Tater Chips was Kelly Adams?
She was, yes.
And you described her as sloppy, correct?
I wouldn't say necessarily.
So your testimony,
Improper character evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
This is an exception to character evidence under the rules 404-B-2, as I'm using this to prove since Kelly was sloppy, Ms. Pentito had the opportunity to steal processor chips.
But Your Honor, the defense may only do that once the prosecution has attacked that pertinent character trait of Ms. Kelly Adams, in which the prosecution has not attacked that pertinent trait of Ms. Kelly Adams.
I don't believe the question falls under 404B2.
Okay, Your
The
Honor.
objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Pentito, you believe the computer chips you handled were easy to steal because of their small size, correct?
I did state that.
Thank you. So working at Tater Chips, you received a 25% off employee discount, right?
All employees did, yes.
And after Kingsley found out about your job at Tater Chips, he suggested that you get chips from Tater Chips, right?
To steal them, yes.
And Kingsley even offered to pay you with reimbursement checks, right?
They were disguised as reimbursement
But you never used the reimbursement money Kingsley gave you to pay for these chips, correct?
because they were never truly the amount for the amount of chips I was getting.
So not only did you steal from Kelly Adams, but you stole from your business partner, right?
I didn't steal from him.
So you didn't steal from Tater Chips?
I did steal from.
Thank you. I'll move on. Your Honor, may I retrieve Exhibit 2?
You may.
Thank you.
Question, put the closing counsel
You may.
or the witness.
Ms. Pentito, do you recognize these?
I do, yes.
What are these?
These are the checks that Kingsley was giving me as payment for stealing the chips.
And earlier you testified that the $50,000 loan that Kingsley asked you to authorize was to replenish inventory, correct?
Yes.
And you also testified that chips, computer chips that you stole were part of this inventory, correct?
Sorry, I'm a little confused. Can you restate the question?
Earlier, you testified on the stand that computer chips were part of inventory, correct?
Yes.
So why would Kingsley Ford give you money to steal chips when he authorized a $50,000 loan for your company to buy these chips?
Well, the $50,000 loan wasn't enough to
$50,000 wasn't enough for $750 as on the first check?
yes, because we were running out of inventory
Objection, Your Honor, the
fast.
council may not ask questions on exhibit 2 as it has not been admitted into evidence.
Your Honor, I'll move on. Thank you.
You may.
So, Ms. Pentito, let me ask you this. Did Kingsley Ford physically force you to steal these chips?
Not physically, but mentally.
Thank you. Did he blackmail you into stealing these chips?
No.
Thank you. And did he threaten your life to steal these chips? So yes or no?
It was
Did he threaten your life?
no.
So you had a choice, and your choice was to steal, correct?
We had an agreement.
But you had a choice at the end of the day, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Do you have any redirect? You may.
Ms. Petito, could you explain why you sold chips from Tater Chips?
Yeah. So Kingsley had an idea to steal chips, and then he would give me reimbursement checks, disguised reimbursement checks for stealing them.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
The witness may be seated. At this time, the court will be in recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All rise and come to order. Court is now back in session.
You may be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the defendant want to present a case? Are you ready? You may call your first witness.
Like to stand on there. Good evening, Dr. Vera. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Auden Vera,
And where do you work, Dr. Vera?
the University of Idaho.
What exactly is your current role in the University of Idaho?
So I'm currently a professor of business management and a appointee of the University Honor Board.
Right. What exactly does the University Honor Board do?
So essentially, we we look into disciplinary actions for anyone that violates our honor code.
Right. And now to your education. How long have you been teaching at the University of Idaho?
So I've actually been teaching at the University of Idaho for roughly around 2 decades.
And before becoming a professor, what exactly was your educational background?
Okay, so actually, I graduated from the University of Idaho, summa cum laude, with a degree in economics. From there, I wasn't satisfied with my education, and so I went to get my MBA, my Master's of Business Administration, from Mercer University in Georgia. Then from there, I went to Franklin University in Ohio in order to get my Doctorate of Business Administration.
Thank you. Now I want to talk to you about your involvement in this case.
Sure.
When did you first meet Kingsley Ford, Doctor?
So I first met Kingsley Ford, which would be during his first semester of his freshman year, when I joined his study group, which happened to be we were on a hike.
Improper use of character evidence.
Your Honor, could opposing counsel please elaborate on which grounds this is improper use of character evidence?
Your Honor, the defense may bring evidence of a defendant's person and trait through the use of an opinion or reputation among the community, but through this jacket incident, it's a specific instance of conduct. And under Rule 608B, this is only admissible on cross-examination.
Your Honor, if I may, under Rule 608-A in the Rules of Evidence, this is permissible as the truthfulness of Kingsley Ford has already been impeached.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, once again, I'd like to point out that the defense may only prove this pertinent trait through the use of an opinion or reputation among the community, but they're bringing up a specific instance of misconduct. And under Rule 608B, this is only allowed on a cross-examination, not on a direct examination.
Your Honor, if I may.
Press the objections premature. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. What was your first impression of Kingsley, Professor?
He was a kind and sincere man. I was impressed by his character.
Why do you say that?
Well, because on this hike, I was a bit chilly. Fortunately, Kingsley Ford lended me this jacket. After the hike, I bought.
Improper use of character evidence.
Your Honor, this is not improper use of character evidence as under Rule 608-A in the Rules of Evidence. You are able to bolster the truthfulness of a witness after their credibility has already been attacked.
But Your Honor, under Rule 608B, a specific instance of conduct may only be brought up in a cross-examination, and this hiking incident is used to prove a defendant's pertinent trait. And once again, a specific instance is only admissible in a cross-examination, not a direct.
Your Honor, if I may, the two rules are separate, and this is admissible in a direct examination.
And Your Honor, the prosecution has not attacked.
Just a second, please. What rule are you citing?
608-A, Your Honor.
And what rule are you citing?
608, Your Honor.
What about Rule 608B2?
Your Honor, I'm using 608B on specific instances of misconduct to emphasize that they cannot bring a specific instance of conduct to prove a pertinent character trait that's only allowed in cross-examination.
The objection is sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Continue.
So when was your next interaction with Kingsley, Doctor?
Around the following year when Kingsley joined my sustainable business management course.
What do you teach in this sustainable business management course?
So essentially, I teach how to run a profitable business that doesn't harm the environment.
Right, and do you assign any projects in this course?
I do. Simply put, I assigned this real life business project. Yeah.
What was Kingsley's submission for this project?
It was essentially this computer refurbishing business that gathers used computer components and turns them into fully functional laptops.
And what were your feelings regarding this proposal?
Honestly, I was very impressed. Kingsley.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. I do not see how the witness's personal feelings is relevant to the defendant's business proposal.
Your Honor, this is relevant to the case as it is being used to express Dr. Vere's knowledge of sophisticated systems, which is one of the key factors of today's case.
The objections overruled. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. So what were your feelings regarding this proposal?
Again, it was very impressive. Kingsley Ford was one of the very few people who took this project very seriously. I was very impressed about the depth of the proposition he made. I was so impressed, in fact, that I actually wanted to invest into this company myself.
And what prerequisites, if any, did you need to meet in order to invest into the company?
Well, there is this one specifically conflict of interest waiver. Any university professor and university student must get a conflict of interest waiver waived in order to conduct business with each other.
So after your conflict of interest was waived, how else did you help Kingsley's business?
After this, I also got a loan for them. I was able to send a letter to one of my contacts at the North Community Bank. And I was able to help them get the loan.
Right, and who was his partner?
Rowan Pentito.
And what was the name of their business?
Sophisticated Systems.
Now, I'd like to move on to after the loan. When was the next time you interacted with Kingsley?
So after the loan, the next time I would interact with Kingsley would actually be after I heard the news of his arrest, when he called me from inside the jail.
And what was your reaction upon hearing of his arrest, Doctor?
Inconsistent with his character.
Why do you say that?
Because off of my understanding of Kingsley Ford, he's a very kind and sincere man.
Now, what was Kingsley's reputation among other students and professors?
Well, among the professors, I was given no indication of dishonesty, and he actually, in fact, had a reputation for honesty amongst the school.
Right, now I want to talk to you about your relationship with Rowan Pentito. What do you handle on the University Honor Board?
So on the University Honor Board, again, we go into disciplinary actions.
Right.
A good example would be plagiarism and cheating.
So when was the last time that you had observed such suspected violations?
Actually, right after the hike I met Kingsley Ford on, I noticed that there was this sudden spike in academic performance in one of my courses.
What did this imply to you?
There is a potential cheating out and about.
Was that the only information you received regarding this matter?
No, actually, I was given I learned that one of my other colleagues, another professor, noticed sudden similar spikes in academic performance. And I also noticed that there are these advertisements for tutoring that would guarantee a whole letter grade improvement.
Right, and who did you believe to be at the center of this cheating ring?
Ultimately, Rowan Pentito.
What did you do after discovering the ads?
Well, I actually had the whole entire honor board join me with my investigation.
And did this investigation affect Mr. Pentito's tutoring business?
It did. Actually, as the investigation evolved, Rowan Pentito actually closed down this business.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You wish to redirect?
Your Honor,
I'm sorry, to cross-examine, sorry.
Dr. Vera, you've invested in many student businesses as a professor, correct?
Yes.
Sophisticated Systems is not your only investment.
Yes.
And you testified earlier that you usually ask the university for a conflict of interest waiver with each investment.
I do.
So if I were to show you this conflict of interest waiver, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I retrieve Exhibit 7 from the clerk? Your Honor, I'm now approaching the opposing counsel with this exhibit.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm now approaching the witness with this exhibit. Dr. Vera, what is this?
The exact waiver I was talking about.
And how do you recognize this?
Because this is the one that I get sent.
And Your Honor, the prosecution would like to admit Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Your Honor, it's proper foundation. There has not yet been a foundation laid to establish that this Dr. Bear has sufficient knowledge.
Your Honor, may I respond? I believe in the witness's direct examination, he has already established that he usually requests for a conflict of interest waiver. And I've already established that with each investment, the witness requests for one as well. So I believe the foundation has already been laid in both the direct examination and my prior questioning and the cross-examination, Your Honor.
Objections sustained. You haven't established the basis for the admission, the foundation.
Dr. Vera, you believe the defendant is an honest person, correct?
He's a kind and sincere man.
But you testified earlier that you believe he's an honest person, yes?
Yes.
But are you aware that Mr. Kingsley Ford never got a proper licensing fee for his past business?
I wasn't aware of that.
Thank you, Dr. Vera. And then besides being a mentor in Sophisticated Systems, you also helped the defendant get a $50,000 loan from the company, for the company, correct?
But that was also, I would honestly say that I was also as a mentor.
And you stated in your affidavit that you never properly signed this loan letter, yes?
The loan reference letter?
Yes.
I signed it on the bottom.
But Dr. Vera, you testified that in your affidavit that you never properly reviewed this loan letter, yes?
Properly reviewed?
Yes.
I signed it.
And this loan letter not only vouched for the defendant's character, but also Ms. Pentito's character.
That's not yet evidence.
Your Honor, I believe Dr. Vera would have a personal recollection of the loan letter, as he also established that in his direct examination, as he established that he helped the defendant get a loan letter. I'm not asking about specific statements made from the loan letter. I'm just asking from his own personal recollection and also his affidavit prior to this case.
You may.
Opposing counsel is asking for a suspect party to consider that it's not yet been evidence.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, I believe that Dr. Vera has a personal recollection of this loan reference letter, as it is stated in both his affidavit and also recognized in his direct examination. And I'm once again not pulling direct nor specific statements from the loan letter. I'm just merely asking if the witness signed the loan letter for the defendant at all.
The witness established personal knowledge of the letter. The objections overruled. You may consent.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Dr. Vera, you testified that you vouched for the defendant's character, but also Ms. Pentito's character with this loan letter, correct?
I did.
And you also stated in your affidavit that you never personally knew Ms. Pentito, correct?
Not personally.
But then you have prior experience with Mr. Pentito, correct? With the work of the University Honor Board,
Yes.
as you investigated a so-called cheating ring, correct?
So, yes.
But then you let things drop because you didn't have enough evidence on Ms. Pentito.
No, the investigation dropped because Rowan Pentito shut down their business.
But you concluded from that investigation that you had no direct evidence on Ms. Pentito's suspicion of cheating, correct?
Oh, well, the investigation dropped because there was a whole entire deal with the whole honor board and the business owner themselves.
So is that a no, Dr. Vera?
Oh, sorry, can you restate your question?
I'm asking if the investigation ended with no direct evidence of Ms. Pentito's wrongdoing, yes or no, Dr. Vera?
Oh, I guess you could say that there was no, how do I say this? There was no,
Yes or no? Did the investigation end with no direct evidence of Ms. Pentito's wrongdoing, yes or no?
then you can say that, yeah.
But then you only reopened the investigation after your investment in sophisticated systems was deemed useless, correct?
I'm so sorry. I wasn't able to understand the beginning part of that sentence.
Opened the investigation into the tutoring business after your investment was deemed useless once the defendant was arrested, correct?
Judge, Your Honor, are you amended the question?
Sustained.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Raise your question.
Dr. Vera, I'm asking if you reopened your investigation into sophisticated systems only after the defendant was arrested. Yes or no?
Well, it happens to be that in a linear timeline, but it was because I gathered more evidence, not because of the defendant was arrested per se.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Ryan, I'd like to direct this.
You may.
Professor, why did you personally investigate into Rowan?
Well, because there was a potential cheating out and about. Again, I'm an appointee of the University Honor Board. It is my obligation to snuff out any potential honor code violations. So, of course, I would want to investigate into anything that I see, and that was just the path that led me down.
Right, and how did the investigation evolve, Doctor?
Well, I think, again, I got the whole entire honor board to back me up with this investigation, and then from there, it evolved.
And how did the investigation end?
Again, with Rowan Pentito closing down her tutoring business.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may be seated, sir. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call based on the fact that to stand.
Now, could you please state your name for the record?
My name is Tay Sullivan Magnum.
And what is your current occupation?
I am currently a private investigator.
And how long have you been a private investigator?
I've been a private investigator for a total of 5 years.
And what kinds of cases have you investigated?
As a private investigator, I worked on cases such as employee thefts and employee embezzlements.
Now, what past occupations have you held, Mr. Magnum?
Before becoming a private investigator, I was actually a police officer for 10 years.
And do you have any other training?
Yes, before becoming a police officer, I had to attend the Post Academy, which is where I gained my standard police training and knowledge.
Your Honor, if you may you please designate Mr. Magnum, Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum, as an expert in the field of criminal investigation?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe the council has established enough credibility for Mr. Magnum to be offered as an expert witness in investigation.
Your Honor, if I may,
Explain the basis for you.
Your Honor, if I may, the witness has testified that he attended the Post Academy, that he spent 10 years working for law enforcement, and that he's investigated several thefts and embezzlements, and that he's been a private investigator investigating cases for about 5 years now.
Your Honor, if I may, in Mr. Magnum's affidavit, he nowhere directly states that he attended the Post Academy.
Your Honor, I do admit that is some extrapolated information, but it's an adjudicated fact that that if you may take judicial notice of now, that you have to attend the Post Academy to become a police officer.
Your Honor, I believe the opposing counsel should have addressed that in housekeeping matters.
Your Honor, under...
I'm sorry. Do you want to voir dire the witness?
Your Honor, my objection for expert witnesses, I do not believe years of experience in law enforcement calls for an expert in the field that opposing counsel is putting her in.
I believe that the witness has sufficient experience, and I will declare he is an expert in the field of criminal investigation. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Magnum, how did your investigation on this case begin?
My investigation began when Kingsley Ford called me about working on this case.
And where did you first meet Kingsley Ford?
I first met Kingsley Ford in his garage that housed sophisticated systems.
Now, what methods did you use for investigation?
In my investigation, I used methods such as interviewing irrelevant people for this case, and I even looked at the C's paperwork from Tater Chips and Sophisticated Systems. I also looked at the physical stolen Tater Chips processors itself.
No, Mr. Mackman, who exactly did you interview?
After hearing Kingsley's side of the story, I interviewed Rowan Petito, Kelly Adams, and Dr. Autumn Vera.
What did you learn from your interview with Miss Petito?
With my interview with Ms. Petito, I learned that Ms. Petito knew more substantial information about computer processors more than.
Hearsay.
Against hearsay. In Rule 803. It's the declarance that existing state of mind that's being used to prove that Kingsley had knowledge of Tater Chips, or Kingsley did not have knowledge of Tater Chips processors, and that Rowan did, rather than any factual.
Your Honor, if I may. No.
Excuse me. You need to use a microphone when you give up, please.
Sorry.
Yes, you may proceed.
Your Honor, Mr. Magnum would only have personal knowledge of Mr. Petito unless she told him about the specific things.
Regardless.
Could you state who the declarant is of the statement?
Sorry, so Mr. Magnum here is testifying that Kingsley Ford had less knowledge than Rowan, which is an exception to the rule against hearsay because it proves the declarant's then existing state of mind, which can be mental or condition, which can be mental, emotional, or physical.
I don't think you've articulated a hearsay objection, so the objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, based on your investigation, what was the nature of Ms. Petito's employment at Tater Chips?
Well, based on my investigation, I learned that Rowan Petito was a courier while working at Tater Chips. That means as a courier, she directly handled the computer processors.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge. Mr. Magnum does not work at Tater Chips, therefore she is not aware of the duties of the couriers at Tater Chips.
Your Honor, he's testifying to what he learned from his investigation, which did span several months and did include an investigation of Tater Chips and people involved with them.
Then you have to lay a foundation. Objection sustained.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, where did you learn that Ms. Petito worked?
I learned that Ms. Petito worked from Tater Chips based on my investigation with the interviews of Kingsley Ford after hearing his side of the story.
And who else did you talk to?
I also talked to Rowan Petito, Kelly Adams, and Dr. Autumn Vera.
And what was Kelly Adams's occupation?
In my investigation, I learned that Kelly Adams was a supervisor for Tater Chips, and I also learned that she was the supervisor for Rowan Petito.
Thank you. Now, who is directly obtaining parts from Tater Chips for Sophisticated Systems?
As I learned in my investigation, I learned that it was Rowan Petito's role to collect parts from Tater Chips for Sophisticated Systems. But in my investigation, she couldn't produce any receipts when obtaining these parts.
Now, why didn't she include these receipts?
Well, as I learned in my investigation, she had an employee discount, and since she was buying these chips, she couldn't produce it.
Your Honor, hearsay again, the witness would not have personal knowledge of the 25% discount unless this was told to her by Rowan Petito.
Objection sustained. You have to lay a foundation.
Thank you,
Thank
Your
you, Your
Honor.
Honor.
Now, what did you notice about Ms. Petito's behavior during your interview?
Well, thanks to my training in the police academy, I can reasonably conclude that Rowan Petito's body language was untruthful because she was prone to mumbling and was jumpy during my interview.
And after interviewing Kelly Adams, what physical evidence did you look at?
After interviewing Kelly Adams, I also looked at the seized paperwork from Sophisticated Systems, but not all of the paperwork were there.
Right, and why was some of the paperwork missing?
Well, as I learned in my investigation, I learned that the parts that Sophisticated Systems were using some of it were donated, and I learned in my investigation that paperwork isn't required for donations.
Right, and who usually obtained the paperwork for Sophisticated Systems?
As I learned in my investigation, Kingsley trusted Rowan to produce these paperwork for Sophisticated
Objection,
Systems.
hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, if I may respond, there is no other reasonable way to induce that that where the paperwork came from besides hearsay, which means that
Saying where the paperwork came from was okay, but then you went farther than. So this objection system.
Thank you, Your Honor.
now, what other physical evidence did you investigate?
Well, aside from the seized paperwork from sophisticated systems and tater chips, I even looked at the stolen tater chip process chips itself.
Could you describe the size of an individual chip?
So each individual chip was very small, and I noticed there was signia on it, and you couldn't even see a signia with it. I even had to use my reading glasses in order to see it.
Now, Mr. Magnum, who else did you interact with for your investigation?
Well, aside from the people I interviewed, I also interacted with Adrian Moltisanti and the evidence he collected.
Now, if you were to see this evidence, would you recognize it?
Yes, I will.
Your Honor, I'd like to retrieve from the clerk what has been admitted into evidence as exhibits number 1 and 6.
You may.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Now, Mr. Magnum, could you read the date of the last item listed on exhibit number 1?
Says here, August 17, 2021.
And can you clarify for the court what exactly exhibit number 1 is?
Exhibit number 1 is a tater chips inventory of missing chips.
Right, but who's the courier for that last order on August 17th?
Says here the courier was Rowan Petito.
And what else does this list account for?
This list also accounts for the order dates and the missing chips and the courier for those orders.
Now, as an expert in the field of criminal investigation, why would you say that this list is important to any investigation of the case?
This list would be very important for an investigation of this case because this list includes the key dates and the total missing of chips for this investigation.
Right, and Mr. Magnum, I want to now direct your attention to exhibit number 6. So could you please clarify what exhibit number 6 is?
Exhibit number 6 is a packet slip from Tater Chips.
And Mr. Magnum, what products are being ordered on the packing slip?
Says here computer processors.
Now, could you please read the order date listed on exhibit number 6?
Says here September 3rd, 2021.
And how do the computer processors listed on that packing slip relate to sophisticated systems?
The packet slip relates to the sophisticated systems because, as I learned in my investigation, some of the parts from sophisticated systems were eventually traced back to this packing slip.
Now, could you point to where in exhibit number 1 it lists missing chips from September of 2021?
It doesn't list. There's no September in exhibit 1, which is weird because, as I learned in my investigation, Rowan was working at Tater Chips during the year of 2021.
Right, but who is the lead investigator listed on that exhibit?
Adrian Moltisanti.
And Adrian Moltisanti, did he make the arrest for Kingsley?
As I learned in my investigation, he arrested Kingsley Ford.
So what would you conclude in your expert opinion about Miss Moltisanti's investigation of this case?
Well, after reviewing the evidence, Miss Moltisanti is prone to missing a lot of key details, including the key month of September, since Rowan was working during this time. And this makes her evidence inconclusive and quite shoddy.
So after your thorough investigation, what kind of conclusion did you come to about this case?
So at the end of my investigation and all the evidence I thoroughly reviewed, I could reasonably conclude that Kingsley Ford is innocent and couldn't have known these chips were stolen.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions. May I retrieve the exhibits from him?
You may.
Thank you.
Prosecution may cross-examine.
Mr. Magnum, you have been a private investigator for 5 years, correct?
As I testified earlier, yes.
And you were a police officer before this?
As I testified earlier, yes, for 10 years.
And as a police officer, you took unauthorized breaks, correct?
I didn't take unauthorized breaks.
In your affidavit, you state that
Your Honor, objection, the affidavit is not admitted into evidence and you can't get to testify.
Yeah. Objection sustained. You need to lay a proper foundation.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Magnum, you were partners with Detective Moltisanti, correct?
During my time in the police force, yes, he was my partner.
And he talked about you taking unauthorized breaks, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Also hearsay.
Your Honor, this is not made for the truth of the matter asserted.
Excuse me.
This is for credibility purposes.
Your Honor, she's offering this to prove the truth of the matter asserted, and the truth of the matter asserted from this statement goes to show that Mr. Magnum's credibility is being attacked, but that's only through the truth of the statement.
Your Honor, if I may, the truth of the matter asserted is relevant to the case today, which is whether or not Kingsley Ford knowingly sold stolen property.
Your Honor, if I may, I didn't object to relevance, I objected to hearsay because she's offering this statement for the truth of the matter asserted, and she's offering that truth to impeach my witness or call him lazy or something.
Your Honor, I'm not implying that Mr. Magnum is lazy.
Can you rephrase your question, please?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Magnum, in law enforcement, it was rumored that you took unauthorized breaks, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, it's for hearsay.
No, it doesn't. Your objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll restate my question. In law enforcement, it was rumored that you took unauthorized breaks, correct?
Yeah, there was a lot of false rumors about me.
And it was by Adrian Moltisanti, correct?
Adrian Monsanto was spreading false rumors about me, yes.
But you also worked with Adrian at the same time as a traffic stop incident, correct?
Sorry, can you restate your question?
But you were also working with Adrian Moltisanti during a traffic stop incident, correct? Your Honor, I'm not offering for the truth of the matter stated, but I'm offering for credibility purposes.
Your Honor, my objection wasn't to calls for hearsay or hearsay, it was to relevance because this incident happened when he was in law enforcement, which was almost 5 years ago, which is well outside the scope of this case.
The credibility of the witness is always relevant. Your objections are overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Magnum, we worked with Adrian Moltisanti during a traffic stop incident, correct?
That is correct. He was my partner.
And in that traffic stop incident, you believe that she crossed the line, correct?
Since the judge ruled against him, yes.
And you believe she did not follow the rules, correct?
Yes, since she did break someone's Fourth Amendment rights.
But you state that dog sniffing rules at that time were unclear,
Your Honor,
correct?
assuming facts on evidence, my witness never testified to that. He did not state that. And if she's referring to his affidavit, then his affidavit is not in evidence either.
Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You need to lay a better foundation.
Moving on, Mr. Magnum, you left law enforcement shortly after that, correct?
That is correct.
And you claim to be an expert in the field of investigation, correct?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, I never asked to claim that he was an expert. I asked you to designate that he was an expert.
Your objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And you are an expert in the field of investigations, correct?
Yes.
So you would testify that you conducted a thorough investigation for the defendant, correct?
That is correct. I did do a thorough investigation.
And you agreed to testify here today, correct?
That is correct.
But you reduced the fee for Kingsley Ford in your investigation, correct?
Well, there were several reasons why I reduced the rate, but
I'm not asking for explanations. I'm asking whether you reduced the fee for the defendant. Please answer with a yes or no.
for several reasons, yes.
So yes.
Yes, for several reasons.
And you worked on other cases besides the defendant's own, correct?
That is correct.
Those that are actually paying the regular fee?
Yes.
And then you interviewed Dr. Vera in your investigation, correct?
Yes, that's one of the people I interviewed.
And you did not spend a lot of time talking to Dr. Vera, correct?
Yeah, for a lot of reasons. I didn't spend a lot of time with Dr. Oliveira for a couple of reasons.
And one of the reasons because you already concluded that Rowan Pentito was the thief, correct?
Well, I already had a lot of reasonable evidence, including the seized paperwork and the people I interviewed. And so I didn't need to spend enough time with Dr. Oliveira.
From your investigation, you concluded that she was the only one who had the access, opportunity, and motive to commit this theft, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, he never claimed that. He did not testify to that. And again, if she's referring to the affidavit, it's not an evidence.
The objection sustained. You can ask an open-ended question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Magnum, didn't Rowan give Ford the chips?
As I learned in my investigation, Rowan did steal chips and deliver it to Kesey Port.
And the defendant was aware of Ms. Pentito's position at Tater Chips, correct?
Kesey Port was aware.
And were you aware that the defendant was paying off a $50,000 loan?
I wasn't aware of that.
And during your investigation, you also looked at seized paperwork from Sophisticated Systems, correct?
That is correct.
And you state that there was missing paperwork for some computer parts, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the witness had
Wait,
said
let
this
him
in
say
his
his
direct.
objection first.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance and ask and answer. I already got to testify about the $50,000 loan.
Objections overruled. You may continue.
I'll restate my question. When you testified in your direct that some parts were missing for some of the computer parts, correct?
Since some of the parts were donated, as I learned in my investigation, that donations isn't required for paperwork, so that's why there was missing.
There's also unaccounted paperwork for chips from Tater Chips, correct?
Unaccounted paperwork?
For chips from Tater Chips, correct?
They may have.
But were you aware there was a packing slip found in the defendant's workshop?
Objection, Your Honor. Unfair extrapolation.
Your Honor, I'm not asking an answer for the question. Your Honor, I'm not asking a specific question about the item. I'm simply asking his awareness of the fact.
Actually, Your Honor, he did testify earlier that he did see evidence that Adrian Montesanti collected. So this is actually asked and answered.
Your objection is overruled.
I'll restate my question. Were you aware there was a packing slip found in the defendant's workshop?
Since this is one of Adrian's evidence, yes.
You testified in your direct that you received chips from Adrian Montesanti, correct?
Are you talking about the stolen chips from Adrian?
The chips you got from Adrian Montesanti.
Yes, those were the stolen chips from Tater Chips.
And you stated in your direct that you could hardly read the insignia, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't even see it. That I didn't even have to put on my reading glasses in order to see it.
But were you aware there was a magnifying glass seized in the defendant's workshop?
Was I aware? Like,
Objection, Your Honor. Assuming facts not in evidence, she's referring to exhibit number 4, which lists the magnifying glass seized in the workshop of Sophisticated Systems. Yet that was not put in evidence yet.
Your Honor, if I may, in the direct, opposing counsel had approached the witness with this exhibit and he recognized this exhibit.
Your Honor, I approached him with exhibits number 1 and 6. Not 4.
The objection sustained, but you may retrieve exhibit 4 if you wish.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, then may I retrieve exhibit 4? I am now showing defense counsel.
4.
Yes. Your Honor, would you like to see this exhibit?
No, you may give it to the witness.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Mr. Magnum, do you recognize this document?
This is a search warrant inventory list.
And do you recognize this?
Yes.
And from your recollection, do you recall seeing a magnifying glass in the exhibit?
I didn't see a magnifying glass while I was at the workshop, but there's a magnifying glass at this exhibit.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge. He may have testified that he saw this evidence, but that's not enough foundation to get him to testify on it because there's a lot of information packed in this.
Your Honor, the witness has testified to recognizing the exhibit.
Your Honor, that's
The
not.
objection's overruled.
But were you aware of the magnifying glass listed in this exhibit?
Well, it's listed in here.
Objection, Your Honor. Assuming facts not in evidence, again, exhibit number 4 is not in evidence.
Your Honor, you had already sustained this objection.
Your Honor,
He's looking directly at the exhibit. It's permissible.
Then fine, Mr. Magnum, everything you testify here today is based on what other people said, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Objections overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'll restate my question. Mr. Magna, everything you testify here today is mostly based on what other people said, correct?
No, not really, because I testified based on my investigation, which is based on evidence from seized paperwork from
But you
City Chip.
interviewed several people for this case, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
May the defense redirect its witness.
Yes.
Also, may the defense request a time check on how much we have left for direct examination.
It's about 12 minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Moltisanti,
Use the microphone.
I'm sorry. Mr. Moltisanti, what rumors did Adrian spread about you?
Well, Moltisanti was spreading false rumors about me taking unauthorized breaks, and that was the reason why I was issuing less citations. He was spreading false rumors about me taking unauthorized breaks.
Right, and moving forward, did you testify about any traffic stops that Adrian was involved in?
In my direct, I didn't testify.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Your Honor, a leading question is,
Permissible.
yes,
Objections overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
now. Mr. Moltisanti, or sorry, Mr. Magnum, can you please tell me about the verdict of that traffic stop incident?
In that traffic stop incident, the judge eventually ruled against Adrian Moltisanti, which the judge claims that she did break someone's Fourth Amendment rights with this traffic stop.
Right, and what happened after that traffic stop in terms of your relationship with Adrian Moltisanti?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. I don't see how Adrian Moltisanti's relationship, Tay Sullivan Magnum's relationship with Adrian Moltisanti is relevant to the case.
Your Honor, if I may, you ruled that credibility is always relevant, and this goes to support his credibility after it's been attacked by the prosecution.
Your Honor, if I may, in my cross-examination, I did not cross Mr. Magnum his relationship with Detective Moltisanti.
Objection sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Magnum, did you mention a reduced rate in your cross-examination?
Reduced rate, yes, there was a reduced rate because there were several reasons why. So since these cases do pay bills, and since this is not an ideal way to pay to get money, I still needed a way to make money off of this case.
Right, and can you enumerate for me all the evidence that you looked at?
So all the evidence I looked at were seized paperwork from potato chip processors and seized paperwork from sophisticated systems.
Right, and remind me again, are you an expert at this trial of criminal investigation?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. I believe this has already been established that he is an expert.
Objections overruled. You may answer.
Your Honor.
Can you remind the court of whether or not you're an expert of criminal investigation?
Yes.
Right, and what is criminal investigation?
Criminal investigation is investigation on criminals, like such as their backgrounds or like the scenarios of what happened to them.
And besides what other people said, what evidence did you collect again?
Besides, I looked at evidence such as the seized paperwork, as I testified earlier, the seized paperwork from Tater Chips and the seized paperwork from sophisticated systems. I even looked at the physical stolen Tater Chip processors itself.
And what conclusion, after collecting enough evidence, did you come to?
After all the evidence I collected and looked at, I could reasonably conclude that Kingsley Ford is innocent and couldn't have known that these chips were stolen.
Thank you for your thorough testimony and investigation, Mr. Magnum. No further questions.
Your Honor, may I ask how much time is left for cross-examination for prosecution?
10 minutes.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
You may sit down. Do you have any other witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the defense would like to call the defendant Kingsley Ford to the stand.
Mr. Ford, do you understand you have the right to remain silent and you do not have to testify? And are you waiving your Fifth Amendment right in order to testify today? Court finds the defendant has knowingly waived his right under the Fifth Amendment. You may take this.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good evening, Mr. Ford. May you please introduce yourself to the judges and the jury?
Good evening. My name is Kingsley Ford.
And Mr. Ford, may you please tell the court why you are here today?
I'm here today because I am facing false charges of selling stolen property.
So, Mr. Ford, can you tell me about your former company, Sophisticated Systems?
Sophisticated Systems originally came from a business project from a class which was taught by Dr. Auden Vera, and its goal was to assemble computers and sell them at affordable prices.
Thank you. What was your role in Sophisticated Systems?
I handled the business side in regards to the inventory and the finance.
Thank you. And who is Rowan Pentito to you?
Rowan Pentito is my former co-worker and co-founder.
And what was Rowan Pentito's role in your former company, Sophisticated Systems?
Rowan was actually the one that handled the assembly.
And can you tell me what was yours and Rowan's agreement on how he would be paid by your company?
So the deal was that I said I couldn't afford to pay a salary, so we agreed to split profits 50-50.
Okay, and who was in charge of acquiring the basic parts you would need to refurbish your computers?
Initially, it was me until Rowan Pentito was hired for Tater Chips.
Thank you. And where did Rowan get these chips from?
Rowan got them from a company called Tater Chips.
Thank you. And what was the agreement that you, Rowan Pentito, and Mr. Pentito, Miss Pentito, had to purchase computer chips from Tater Chips for your company?
So Rowan had a 25% employee discount, and she would buy the chips, deliver them to me, and I would reimburse Rowan.
And what form of payment did you use to reimburse Miss Pentito?
I wrote reimbursement checks.
Your Honor, may I retrieve Exhibit 2, please?
You may.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I approach the opposing counsel?
You may.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Now, Mr. Ford, do you recognize these checks?
Yes, these are the reimbursement checks that I wrote.
And how many times did you reimburse Miss Pentito?
I reimbursed Miss Pentito at least 5 times.
And could you remind me what you wrote these reimbursement checks for?
These reimbursement checks are reimbursements for any computer parts that Rowan Pentito buys from Tater Chips.
So for the record, can you tell me what was yours and Rowan's agreement regarding purchasing the chips?
So the agreement was that Rowan would use his discount, with her discount, deliver the chips to me, and I would write reimbursement checks for Rowan for any processors bought from Tater Chips.
Thank you, sir. And Mr. Ford, how did you come up with the amounts on the checks?
When Rowan would deliver the chips to me, Rowan would give the prices to me, and I would write the checks.
Your Honor, I'd like to admit exhibit number 2 into evidence.
Is there an
No
objection?
objections, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Exhibit 2 is admitted without objection.
Thank you. So, Mr. Ford, I'd like to draw your attention to the third check listed on that exhibit. So if these were reimbursement checks, why did you put Tuna Helper Fund on the memo line?
Oh, that's just me being a typical college student. It's just a joke on a past experience with Rowan.
Now, thank you. Now, please look at the last check. I believe it's on the second page handed to you. So what was yours and Rowan's work environment like at Sophisticated Systems in the months following that last check?
So Rowan was actually complaining a lot about the workload.
And can you recall any moments that really showed Ms. Pentito's stress?
There was one point where...
Your Honor, relevance, I don't see how Ms. Pentito's workload and how her distress is relevant to this case at hand.
Your Honor, may be heard? Your Honor, this question is relevant as it shows Ms. Pentito's motive to steal these chips.
The objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Ford, let me ask you again. Can you recall any moments that Ms. Pentito really showed her stress?
There was a time when Rowan was complaining about not having tuna for Tuna Helper.
Okay, hence the Tuna Helper Fund on the memo line. Thank you for that. So, did you know anything about chips being stolen from Tater Chips?
No.
Did you know Rowan was stealing from Tater Chips?
No.
Why did you not know Rowan was stealing from Tater Chips?
Because Rowan didn't say anything to me and all I did was write reimbursement checks.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Mr. Ford, I'd like to ask you a few more questions, but I'd like you to remember that you are under oath here, okay? Mr. Ford, did you knowingly sell computers with stolen Tater Chip processors in them?
No,
Did you know that Rowan was stealing processor chips from Tater Chips?
no,
And Mr. Ford, did you know that Rowan was using stolen processor chips from Tater Chips in your company's sophisticated systems computers?
I didn't know they were stolen.
And why did you not know this?
Because Rowan didn't say anything about stealing.
Mr. Ford, after your arrest, can you tell me what changed in your life?
Well, my loan's been defaulted, I have lost my company, and my credit has been ruined.
So, Mr. Ford, your company was ruined, your loan defaulted, and the person you trusted
Your Honor,
most.
Counsel is testifying, may he ask questions to the witness, not testifying for the witness.
I'll rephrase my question, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mr. Ford, everything you built went away just like this. Why fight this case?
Because I am innocent. I didn't steal anything. I didn't knowingly sell stolen property, and I didn't tell Rowan to steal, so I am innocent.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Your Honor, no further questions.
Do you wish to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Mr. Ford, you believe that greed is what makes the nation great, correct?
That's what I said.
And this principle applied to your other businesses, isn't that right?
Yep.
So you've had other businesses, correct?
In the past,
Your second business required walking dogs, isn't that correct?
Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, my line of questioning will establish and will lay the foundation of Mr. Ford's credibility. And that is how it is relevant to
I'll
this.
give you a little leeway.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Keep it brief.
Thank you, Your Honor. And you're aware that businesses require licensing fees, isn't that correct?
I can't deny that.
But your business went on without a licensing fee, correct?
That was a mistake.
Your business went on, Mr. Ford, yes or no question, without a licensing fee, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now let's talk about your most recent business venture. You founded Sophisticated Systems, correct?
I did.
And you handled the inventory for this business, correct?
I did.
And you knew Rowan before starting up your business, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And you actually had to persuade Rowan to work with you, isn't that correct?
Both of us were interested.
But it took a lot of convincing on your part, isn't that correct?
Objection, Your Honor, assume facts, not in evidence.
Sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'll move on. Mr. Ford, your business had a shortage of processors, isn't that correct?
Around 2020,
And you knew that Rowan had a job at Tater Chips, isn't that correct?
I did.
So your business, Sophisticated Systems, were selling laptops that contained tater chips in them?
That's all I knew.
Oh, so you knew that you were selling laptops with chips from tater chips in them.
But I didn't know they were stolen.
Mr. Ford, you didn't know they were stolen, but you actually told Officer Agent Montesanti that the chip that you sold him had a tater chip in it. Isn't that correct?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay. That's an out-of-court statement offered up for the truth of the matter, and even though the defendant is here, he never testified to that in court.
Your Honor, this was established in Officer Agent Montesanti's direct, and this was what Mr. Ford told Officer Agent Montesanti.
Your Honor, please be heard. Your Honor, the defendant is not bound to Officer Agent Montesanti's testimony here today. Therefore, he should have had to testify on that matter.
The objection's overruled.
Thank you.
He's the declarant and he's just.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ford, most of the laptops that was seized from your workshop had a tater chips chip in them. Isn't that correct?
I said that's as far as I knew.
So during that time that Rowan stopped coming to work, Officer Adrian Montesanti also started working, correct?
Adrian did.
And you were organizing big business records with Officer Adrian Multisanti during this time, correct?
That is correct.
And you were also building laptops during this time, isn't that correct?
I learned from Rowan.
So you were building laptops during that time, correct?
Yes.
So you were handling the chips and the computer parts in order to assemble a computer, isn't that correct?
Yeah.
So you're aware of the chips that went in the laptop, isn't that correct? Because you testified that you were assembling these computer parts.
I knew that basic.
You knew that, thank you, Mr. Ford. And you were offering Ms. Bentito reimbursement checks, correct?
Yes.
And you would recognize these reimbursement checks because you wrote it, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I now retrieve Exhibit 2 from the table? Is it with you? Mr. Ford, can you read to me all the memos that are written on that reimbursement check?
Memo number 1 says reimbursement for chips. Memo number 2 says chips. Memo number 3 says Tuna Hopper Fund. Memo number 4 says CPU reimbursement, and the last one says TC.
TC stands for tater chips, correct?
Yes.
So you knew these computer chips came from tater chips, yes or no, Mr. Ford?
I didn't know that.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. So you knew these chips came from tater chips?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Permission to redirect my address.
You may.
So, Mr. Ford, as you stated, you knew that these were from Tater Chips, correct?
Well, I didn't know they were stolen.
Exactly. So why did you write these reimbursement checks again?
Oh, because I wholeheartedly believed that Rowan had been buying them from Tater Chips, and
Because you were purchasing the tater chips. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Your Honor, may I ask the timekeeper how much time I have left if I can do a recross? 6 minutes. Your Honor, may I do a recross?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Ford, you testified that you didn't know that the chips from your laptops were from tater chips, isn't that
Your
right?
Honor, outside the scope.
Your Honor, the counsel asked about Mr. Ford's knowledge about the chips coming from tater chips prior to his redirect, Your Honor.
Maybe her. That question was in my direct examination, so she's doing a recross right now. She is only bound to my redirect. I believe it's under rules of competition 4.7.
I believe you raised it, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Mr. Ford, I'll repeat my question. You testified that you didn't know the chips were stolen from tater chips, isn't that correct?
yes.
But on the reimbursement checks, you put TC, isn't that correct?
Tater Chips.
And that stood for tater chips, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Thank you. This concludes the presentation of evidence. The court will stand in recess for 5 minutes so the students have the opportunity to prepare their closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I think we'll just.
To order. We'll now have the closing arguments. The prosecution, you may begin your argument.
Your honors and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, now you know the facts, and these facts cannot set Kingsley Ford free. As this trial comes to a close, it will be made clear to you that the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Kingsley Ford did knowingly sell stolen property. Tonight, you heard Ms. Rowan Pentito testify. It is a fact that the defendant knew about Ms. Pentito's job at Tater Chips and her 25% discount. But it is also a fact that Ms. Pentito never used this 25% discount because she was manipulated by the defendant to steal chips. And though the defendant claimed that he reimbursed Ms. Pentito through checks, you know from Rowan herself that these checks never covered the total amount of the costs of all the stolen chips. And how do we know this? You heard the Tater Chips supervisor, Miss Kelly Adams, testify that Tater Chips never did any business with sophisticated systems. Through her inventory and the data she compiled, she was able to uncover that out of the 42 missing orders, Rowan worked 25 of them. And this only prompted Miss Adams to do further investigation, which then led to Miss Pentito's confession that she was stealing the chips for sophisticated systems. Though Miss Pentito was aware of the potential consequences, she chose to be upfront with the law. She chose to be upfront with the law by seeking for immunity. And how do we know this? You heard today Officer Adrian Moltisanti testify that Ms. Pentito had an immunity agreement that was negotiated by her lawyer and law enforcement. And through this, an undercover investigation began, led by Officer Adrian Moltisanti. So from the Sophisticated Systems Workshop, Officer Adrian Moltisanti seized evidence, including a Tater Chips packing slip and 25 computers, most of which had a Tater Chips chip in them. Officer Adrian Moltisanti was also able to compile seized Sophisticated Systems inventory data, which only proved that Sophisticated Systems were selling more laptops than chips they owned. Detective Moltisanti's undercover investigation only proved one logical conclusion, that the defendant knew the chips were stolen but sold them anyways. You also know the defendant knowingly sold stolen property supported by the defense's own testimonies. You would think that as a defendant, as the founder and manager of Sophisticated Systems, would know how to operate and run a business after owning multiple businesses at such a young age. However, the defendant had turned to manipulate Ms. Pentito when they experienced processor shortage. You heard the defendant testify that he never knew these chips came from Tater Chips, but when Ms. Pentito stopped coming to work, it was him and Officer Adrian Moltisanti who worked on the business together by organizing data and compiling computer parts. Dr. Auden Vera is a doctor of business and a member of the University Honor Board, but he fails to uphold honesty and honor as her values. Dr. Auden Vera violated a conflict of interest waiver letter and illegally searched students' academic records in relation to an investigation that accused Ms. Pentito of holding a cheating ring in the school community. But Dr. Auden Vera also failed to provide evidence of any wrongdoing of Ms. Pentito. Mr. Kingsley Ford hired a private investigator after his arrest, Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum. At a reduced rate, Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum failed to conduct a thorough investigation because he failed to thoroughly question Dr. Auden Vera, claiming that her impeccable reputation will suffice and that her word has the right to be respected. You would think that after years in law enforcement and as a private investigator, Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum would know how to thoroughly investigate a case to reach a conclusion. However, he did not. Your Honor, I submit to you that we, the prosecution, have met our burden of proof and that we ask that you find the defendant, Kingsley Ford, guilty of knowingly selling stolen property. Thank you.
Thank you. How much time does she have left? Okay, thank you. You may make your closing argument. You may.
The prosecution stated that there were more chips there were more computers sold than bought, but they never proved that, and they haven't even introduced Exhibit 5, which is so I am making an objection, assuming facts on evidence, and I will have to strike that from the record.
The objection sustained. At this time in a regular court, the court would give the jury instructions on how to handle that. But we'll move on to your closing argument.
Have instruction 6 open for my closing argument.
Okay. Number 6.
Page 56.
Page. Thank you.
Prosecution claims the facts will be known and will not set Kingsley free. But here's the thing. The facts were known and Kingsley Ford must be set free. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the trial that unfolded today told the story of a promise broken, a dream ended, and a life shattered. I want to remind you that the prosecution has the burden of proof, proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Kingsley Ford knowingly sold property owned by Tater Chips. But the only thing they've proved was Kingsley Ford's story of a promise broken, a dream ended, and a life shattered. Now let's revisit the story that my co-counsels and I have told through our case in chief. You heard from Dr. Auden Vera, who inspired the start of Kingsley's dream. The highly educated Dr. Vera saw the honesty in Kingsley's ambition. He also conducted a reasonable investigation into a cheating ring orchestrated by none other than Rowan Pentito, though yet again, he escaped the consequences of his actions. Dr. Vera saw the honesty and integrity of Kingsley's misguided trust in Rowan regarding sophisticated systems. You heard from Tay Sullivan Magnum, a private investigator with nearly 2 decades of investigative experience. Magnum delegated the necessary time for his investigation into Kingsley's shattered life and found Kingsley's innocence. We also qualified Mr. Magnum as an expert witness in criminal procedure and investigation, and with this expertise, Magnum did accurately declare Moltisanti's investigation to be substantially inconclusive. Lastly, you heard from Kingsley Ford himself, the real victim of this case. Kingsley trusted Rowan. He was his friend, his confidant, his partner. Kingsley honestly believed that Rowan was using a 25% employee discount to purchase Tater Chips processors, a discount that was confirmed by Rowan Pentito herself to have existed. Kingsley thought he was reimbursing Rowan, but in reality, Kingsley was just a victim of Rowan's broken promise. Now let's review how the prosecution has broken its promise of justice to Kingsley Ford, ended his dream, and shattered his life. We proved that there was no aspect of Detective Moltisanti's investigation that could promise accuracy. Adrian's investigation was inconclusive at best, as Adrian failed to include several important key aspects of his investigation. We proved that Adrian neglected to include the dates of February, September, and October, where Rowan could have stolen processors. There are 89 days in those 3 months. That's 89 pieces of evidence missing from his investigation. We proved Mr. Adams' disillusionment regarding matters relating to Tater Chips' supply chain. Adams testified that she procrastinated with Tater Chips' paperwork, which is the very paperwork that is being used against Kingsley Ford today. Incompetent Kelly Adams failed to fully account for her missing chips, as she only interviewed 1 of 3 couriers with missing chips on their deliveries. We proved that the only reason Kelly's testifying is to save her own life at Tater Chips, at the expense of shattering Kingsley's. We proved that Rowan Pentito, with the opportunity, chose to physically steal the chips. Not only did she choose to steal from Tater Chips, but from her friend, her business partner. Rowan chose to gain legal immunity for testifying against her partner today. Mr. Rowan Pentito broke the promise of partnership they held with my client, Kingsley Ford, and violently ended Kingsley's dream. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I know you feel the inkling of doubt in the prosecution's case. That's what we call reasonable doubts, the feeling that the case could go either way. The prosecution's case is built purely on a promise broken, a dream ended, and a life shattered. but I want to elaborate that the prosecution has the burden of proof, yet they have not met that burden. Jury instruction number 6 details what prosecution must prove in order for you to find Kingsley Ford guilty. There are 5 fields they must prove, all of them to find Kingsley guilty. Yet the prosecution hasn't even come close to proving them all. They haven't proven that Kingsley Ford knowingly sold stolen chips. They haven't proven that this was on or between February 2021 and May 2022. They haven't even proven that this was in the state of Idaho. Therefore, it is your duty. You must find Kingsley Ford, the defendant, not guilty. That is it.
Thank you. You have 40 seconds for rebuttal.
Your Honor, the defense practiced exactly what they preached. A promise broken, a dream ended, a life shattered. Dr. Auden Vera broke a promise by violating the restrictions stated in the waiver letter. Mr. Tay Sullivan Magnum broke the promise of thoroughly investigating a case because he did not thoroughly question Dr. Auden Vera. Kingsley promised to split profits 50-50. Instead, he broke the promise by manipulating Ms. Pentito to steal chips. This shattered Ms. Rowan Pentito's life. We ask that you find the defendant guilty of knowingly selling stolen property. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give the students a round of applause. The judges will now take a 10-minute recess in order to complete our score sheets and attend to other matters. We'll come back then at 8:35. The court is in recess.
Yeah.
Please be seated.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I apologize for being a little tardy, but it was a very tough decision. So they're tallying who's the overall winner. And while we wait, I'd like to give the panel members an opportunity to say a few words. So I'll start with Associate Justice Carbolino.
Thank you, Justice Merriman. First of all, you're going to have to wait for the announcement of who the winners are. But I want to emphasize that there are no losers tonight. I thought that both teams did an excellent job. I surely appreciate and understand why both teams are in the finals, because the level of skills that you displayed tonight was very commendable, and I want to congratulate you on the efforts that you did. And I think your parents and all those here tonight should be very proud of all your performances. We don't have a time to go through all the various performances, but I do want, since I get to be the first one to say something, I do want to point out that Mr. Rodriguez, you demonstrated a calm, cool, collected demeanor, except when you cross-examine your first witness. You seem a little excited. When you start off, it's hard when I didn't have anything to compare it with until the very end. I had to go back. But I thought that Ms. Kanata, as a witness, that you were very convincing. You were spontaneous, and of course, so did Mr. Kingsley Ford. Now I'm probably stealing some of the thunder of my colleagues here, but I just wanted to mention some of the performances that stood out in my mind. But that is in no way to demean or to say anything less regarding the performances of all the other students here. And your schools should be very proud of the way you've represented your schools tonight. And I have been on this bench for 24 years. And I look forward to seeing you in the near future arguing before Chief Justice Torres, Justice Merriman, and myself, and our trial courts. And I hope I'm still on the bench when you do come before us. But congratulations. And I'd like to give you a big hand if everyone can join me.
I recall one of the students from Moot Court from the academy went to Harvard Law School and graduated, and other students have done the same. So there's some shoes you can fill out there if you want to be in the legal profession. This is a good start. I'd like to also give Judge Trelawney an opportunity to say a few words.
I too like to congratulate you all. You all did a great job. I see this all the time. I'm in a superior court level. So trials come to my court, and we see people arguing cases and objections and admitting evidence all the time. And I think you all did very well, especially when it came to the evidence, did very well. Objections did very well. In my head, one of the things is don't object to object. Make sure you have a rationale why is that important to object. I know people were nervous. Things slow down. I know you have a limited amount of time. In real life, you usually get forever. Not forever, but And so yeah, just find what's important and get that out as soon as you can and move forward. And that way you won't feel rushed, you won't look rushed, and so forth. Some of you are very confident in your whether you're doing direct or closing. That was very impressed with as well. And the witnesses, you give yourself a round of applause because you guys did very well. When we go back, we ask each other, is that their real personality? Or are they playing the game? And, you know, some of you fit that role that perfectly, you know. A police person, you know, you acted just like a police person. And private eye, you acted like a private eye. And so, but I do want to thank you all. You know, it's a good starting point here. And you did great. And thank you for having us here.
And we have two very honored guests, so I would like to ask Dominique I'm sorry, to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Honor. You see, even I do it because I'm a practicing attorney. I don't sit on the bench, but let me tell you, to both teams, you did an excellent job. Part of being a trial lawyer is preparation, and it is easily noted that you both are well prepared for the cases before you. Being on my side, though, which would normally be the side that you're on, couple of suggestions for you. Number one, it's always good to have your theme, but if the other side starts disrupting that theme, make sure you try to stay intact with that. So if objections start getting hurled your way and all those other things, and you're trying to put something in evidence, don't stop trying to get it in evidence. Actually take a beat, go back, make sure that you get that in evidence, because that is key to actually establishing your position. Secondly, is that you always, for both sides, need to go back to the original charging instrument. I know that in your closing for the defense, you went through and acknowledged what the actual elements to the charge were. But in both, in my opinion, in both of your positions, in your opening statement and your closing, that is how you develop your entire thing. So whatever the elements are, you need to establish those. If you're the prosecution, if you're the defense, you need to also establish what the burden is. Never, for defense, put yourself in a position where you have to establish burden. It's the prosecution side. So that concept of beyond a reasonable doubt, that's always their responsibility. For the prosecution, it's always your responsibility to establish that it's there. And so I would just, you know, as you grow through this experience and as you prepare yourself for advocacy, you always want to tie it back. You have to, in order to prove your conviction. And then the last thing I'd say is that the trial experience is all about being flexible. Things are going to happen, and it drives back to the first thing, which is about being prepared. And the more that you're prepared, the more flexible you can be. So if objections are getting hurled your way and they're trying to throw you off track, you can always pivot. And the flexibility and the beauty about a trial is that you can always position yourself that way, that everything that you're trying to communicate and advocate can actually be put forward. So for me, I think, you know, I've seen worse from actual attorneys. So you guys did an outstanding job. And I'm thankful and honored to have been here. Thank you.
And Anna Clark.
Thank you, Justice. First of all, I am so impressed, and I cannot tell you enough how proud I am of all of you and how much I look forward to having you join our ranks at NAPABA. And I hope that you consider a membership at NAPABA once you, when you begin your law school career, if that's where you decide to go. I joined actually as a law student. And so please feel free to reach out after this. My information is publicly available and I'm happy to provide it to you. I also teach at Fordham Law, and I can tell you that between my first trial as a prosecutor and the students that I teach, all of you are infinitely more prepared than many of the people that I've seen. So another round of applause for all of you and your coaches and your witnesses. Having said that, a few pointers. One is that you really should start thinking about lawyers, not in terms of what you see on TV, but rather, what is the point that you're trying to make? What are you trying to accomplish by doing what you're doing? And I think you'll find that if you do that, you will be less inclined to do things because you think a lawyer should sound a certain way, or should look a certain way, or should say certain things. Instead, you should look at trial work as a conversation between you and the jury, between you and the court. And you don't need to take such strong, impassioned pleas all the time throughout your presentation. You really should pick the points where you're going to try to make a point, try to emphasize something, trying to infuse anger, and make sure that your tone matches the substance of what you're trying to say. So think of this as a conversation. The other thing is you're all well prepared. Take a step back at various points during your preparation and ask yourself, is this the organization that I want to use for my presentation? Both in terms of the macro, right, the big picture, what overall are you trying to accomplish? And then also in terms of the micro pieces of the trial. For this particular witness, what are the items that I need to get out? And what are the things that I'm going to need to elicit? So for example, for the prosecution, in your opening, you have to establish jurisdiction. You have to establish when this crime was committed, where it was committed, and who the defendant is who committed the crime. Must. In New York, the case can get dismissed just after your opening if you don't do that. Typically, prosecutors in New York will also read actually portions of the charging instrument, precisely for the reason that President Calhoun mentioned. So think about those themes, and then also be careful about objections. Major in the majors, as one judge likes to tell us in court. Don't object because you can. Ask if objecting will further your goal. Right? Or will it make you look petty? Will it make you look like you are just making life difficult for everybody? Because courts and jurors can get impatient if you're objecting too much. Select the points that you really think will help you out in your case. And then also, if you are cross is a very hard thing to do. Many lawyers still don't do it very well. And so a couple of pointers that I'd like to share with you. One is, again, think of major in the majors. Just because you can cross-examine in certain things that the witness said doesn't mean you should. Because then you want to just emphasize the pieces that you think are going to really drive the point home to the jurors, that this is an untrustworthy witness, or that these are the facts that I want you to emphasize. And be very careful about standing up again if you've already directed or if you've already crossed, and be judicious about whether you want to stand up again and ask more questions, because it can open the door to the other side. All of you are very poised, so continue to do that, continue to cultivate that. And if there is something unexpected that happens, pause. There's nothing wrong with that. People are not going to think that you're unprepared. It's okay to think, and it's okay to gather your thoughts before you proceed. So congratulations again, and I look forward to seeing you all practice and hopefully seeing you at NAPABA.
We're looking forward to tomorrow because these kind people who are here with us are going to be presenting to the Guam Bar Association on artificial intelligence in the law, and on how a recent United States Supreme Court decision has affected affirmative action, if I've got that right. Okay. We don't have the scores yet.
Do you have any questions for us, perhaps?
You may.
So, and I'm gonna dive a little bit into this, and then I just want to, for the defense, really, but you also can use this, tie things back to simplicity. So as an example, I did this while y'all were arguing. At some point, y'all kept talking about the checks, right? The checks, and then also the whatever the exhibit is that has the chips in it, right? So just take a little bit more in your preparation, right? So 25% is the discount or whatever it was, right? So if you look, the checks, there's 5 checks that are written. There's a certain amount of chips that were taken at the same time, right? If you go back in the witness statements, I think they said that generally they sell the chips around $250 per piece. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So look in the fact pattern, take the checks, right? So on April 14, 21, they write a check for $750. Then if you look at the chips that were stolen at the time, there's 3 chips. Do simple math, 3 divided by the 750, 4, excuse me, the 4 chips taken. 4 divided by the 750 comes out to $187, $187.50 per chip. If you take the 250, times it by the 0.25%, that gives you $187.50. When you're arguing, you can use that to establish basis. And just in my opinion, I think you missed an opportunity there to make things simple, to make them understood by the jury that you're going to meet. Okay, so just as an example of how you try to connect the case and make it well understood for everyone. That's it.
Anything else you want to add?
No, and for me, if you have any questions for us afterwards, happy to answer them.
The score is very tight. One ballot is 90. I know you're going to see these 90, 89, 96, 91, 89, 91, 78, 85, 85, 92. So that shows that this was really a outstanding competition. But the overall winner is Father Duenas. We also had the opportunity to, among ourselves, choose an outstanding attorney tonight and an outstanding witness. And once again, it wasn't easy. We had several candidates for each of those awards, but the panel has decided that Dennis Rodriguez was the outstanding attorney. And Kyra Kanata was the outstanding witness. One thing I neglected to do, and I meant to do early on, was to ask the coaches if they would please stand and be recognized. This is a partnership with the Guam Bar Association and the courts, and we really appreciate the attorneys who've stepped up and devoted a lot of time to coach. And we also appreciate the teacher sponsors who've also played a role in the team's successes. So this brings to a conclusion tonight's competition. And I sincerely congratulate everyone for an outstanding job. Thank you. We'd like to take photographs, one with the Academy and one with Father Duenas. So if we'll move the podium, and if they could come forward, and we'll start with the Academy.
Let me ask, where do we stay up here and they come up here? Maybe we just come together. Yeah, okay. There we go. Yes. Okay.